So this Rave Story TV podcast for me is the ultimate. It's literally the ultimate. I've not seen this man for 8 years. Last time he was in the UK, we had a wonderful time DJing together, eating chicken, just talking about the old days, his history. And I don't think I could quite conjure up in words what this man's complete and utter influence to breakbeat culture, rave culture, techno culture, the evolution of the music. There's not enough words to explain his influence over the world. His injection of what he did pre-coming to England in '89 with the Bones breaks and the music he was releasing was just magical. If you went in record shops, it was so different to the house, the acid house, the Detroit techno. He showed us the future without us even realizing he was showing us the future. And then he come to England in '89 and started playing at the raves. And fuck me, sorry for swearing so early on. He grabbed the vibe and just showed England, like, this is the way you're going.
Wow.
And Frankie, we're going to have the deepest conversation, and I'm so happy that you're back in the country. Man, and I'm so happy
anybody was gonna share. If anybody was gonna get the story, Bunter is the man to do it. And you know, been around the way for many years. That's 37 years later from, you know, coming first over to England in '89. And, you know, we didn't really know what was going on. And we were thrusted into this culture that has lasted all these years, and it still grows bigger every day. And just to have that kind of history. And, you know, I never came to the UK before, and we were just thrusted on this stage with like 25,000 people. You know, energy, biology, sunrise, all the early raves. And it was just a beautiful time to, you know, experience life.
Yeah, and you know what's more beautiful is that some of those energy videos and stuff have come out on the internet, on YouTube, crystal clear. And there you are, a young, mischievous man.
I mean,
on
God, this is the I'm the 60-year-old version right now. But like, I was 22. And I mean, couldn't have been, you know, like born in 1966. I think that year of being born and growing up with the music in New York led me to the UK and then the world, and it just never really looked back. You just do it, you know?
Seeing that, when that energy clip, I don't want to get to the rave yet, but just seeing that energy clip and you're playing and you're saying all this scratching's making me itch, and there's thousands of Brits in front of you, and you've got this real cheeky vibe about you, and it's like, I love going back and watching that. It's like an amazing moment in time.
It was just new. It was new for everybody, you know, and all the people dancing on the speakers and the love between, you know, you had the footballers who didn't get along, and then all of a sudden they're all hugging each other on ecstasy, and black and white. It didn't matter what color you were. We were all human, and we were having this experience with the music that never happened before. And I mean, it was just such a great time of life because, you know, we all been through a lot of, you know, there's a lot going on in the world today, and the music saved us all. You know, we're on that dance floor and the DJ's got that vibe. I mean, there's nothing like it. So
Frank, I've made it a real important part of my social media, my DJing. This is called the Rave Story TV.
Yeah.
And regularly you see me tagging you and collabing with you, with Tommy Musto. And it's been a really important part of what I do now to make sure that I capture the heritage.
To preserve it for the future.
Preserve it and explain exactly these moments in time that created breakbeat, rave, techno, hardcore, jungle, drum and bass, everything that come on. And it's important for me when I talk about you. It's important for me when I talk about Tommy. It's important for me when I talk about early Amen, breakbeat records and your influence. But also I'm fascinated with New York. I'm absolutely fascinated with New York. I'm fascinated with hip hop, breakbeats, graffiti, breakdancing. And like you say, you was born in 1966. So you completely and utterly by the late 70s, early 80s caught everything.
Yeah, it was immersed by it, like perfect timing. Almost.
Yeah, so I want you to talk me through your discovery of music, what New York was like growing up, your first taste of hip hop, breakbeat, graffiti culture, etc.
I mean, my first memories of life, and this is gonna sound really cliche, but like, my parents took me. I was maybe almost 3 years old. I was still like 2 and a couple months. They wanted to go to Woodstock in 1969, and never made it quite to Woodstock, but got on the thruway and went upstate to try to get to Woodstock. And my first memories of life, I remember giving peace signs to Hell's Angels bike riders. Like, so you think, Hell's Angels is like hell. Angels would be like kind of heaven, hell. It's like I was already going through, my extremes. That's an extreme thing, but that's my first memory of life. Giving these, like, they look like ZZ Top guys with long beards. I'm giving them peace signs, and my dad was very into music from the time I was born and bought lots of records. So I grew up around the music, and in 1973, my brother was born in 71. Adam X, he's another pretty well-known, techno guy, lived in Berlin for a long time, came back to New York, and now we're doing stuff in New York still to this day. I'm going to be 60 years old in a couple months, so, I mean, just to be here and experience, like, what I've always gone through with the scene it's a lovely thing to be here, so.
Yeah.
But where do we go from here? 73, we talk about, we mentioned it before we started the interview about hip hop, and I've had this thing, like, a couple of years ago, I think in 2023, hip hop allegedly celebrated its 50-year anniversary. We've been having a hard time with this the whole time.
I have a hard time with this.
Watching like your podcast. I watch a lot of podcasts. So Crazy Legs, who's Rocksteady crew, was on Drink Champs, which is a very, well-known rap podcast. And Crazy Legs was saying, I don't know what they're talking about 1973 being the birth of hip-hop, because we didn't call it hip-hop until like 82, 83. And I'm thinking, I'm watching this guy, and he's telling the story, and I'm like, you really don't have the scene before you had, like, you can't say I was raving in 1984 in Chicago because of Acid House. You can't say that, because I've had people tell me, they were raving in the United States back in 1987. No, rave is definitely, it's UK, straight up UK thing. Without the UK, there'd be no rave culture. Yeah, we had Acid House. Yeah, we had House and Techno. So whereas in rave, House and Techno might have been the soundtrack to our culture, hip hop has such a very important part in the history of rave, especially that in the UK, the breakbeats were the first things that came about during, 89, 90, 91, and had developed into drum and bass over like a 4-year period. So I think it's important to know that, the drum and bass culture, which is your guys, the British genre that was born here and came out of Brixton and out of Hackney. Because, when I came in 89, I was staying a lot of the parties were happening down by the Fridge, which is Brixton. And it seemed like the club scene that was within the rave culture happened just south of the Thames River in London. Like, not the big raves, but, the clubs and the parties. And I was doing a lot of them. We got signed to XL Recordings early on. Even XL, they were like located right in the same kind of, I don't know, it wasn't Hackney or Brixton, but it was within, just south of the Thames River. I remember going over the Tower Bridge all the time. Right? I heard about that bridge. We call it London Bridge in the United States. We know it's not London Bridge, it's Tower Bridge, but we going over that bridge, like, and I thought, wow, this is a real piece of history here, and we were making history, not even knowing it at that time. So
East and South London plays a huge part. One of the reasons why I'm so staunch with the Rave Story TV and so staunch with the history of music, like when I've done House Before House or cover your influence with the Amen and stuff, is bizarrely enough the August the 11th 1973 story of hip hop.
Yes, 1520 Sedgwick Avenue.
Does not
we know
compute
it.
in my brain that this is not to take away influence of legends and stories, but I think we have to separate myth from fact, and I simply can't believe that a music can be created on one magical night. It's like saying Frankie DJ'd at this event with an Amen breakbeat, and thus this thing is created. Music simply doesn't happen on this one thing.
So we're talking about August 11th, 1973, 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx. Cool Heart did a community room party. that he wrote the party out on an index card with ink. It was 25 cents to get in. Now, mind you, I'm only 7 years old at this point, but on that same weekend of August 11th, 1973, my family, it was my mom, my dad, me and my brother, we moved out of our apartment and we moved into Flatbush, which was a neighborhood like 4 miles away from where I grew up. But we moved into our house that weekend. And why I remember it being important to me was we moved next to these railroad tracks. So we lived on a street that was a dead end, and the last house on the left was my house. In the backyard, there was a gate to go down these railroad tracks that were like, they had freight trains once in a while, but it was like a backyard, like a park. It was very unique for New York City life to have something like this in your backyard. And about 5 blocks down the tracks was a flea market every weekend. And my dad would take me there to buy records, and we were getting 4 little, 7-inch 45 singles for $1. So my grandmother gave me like $5 every Sunday, and I go with my dad and we go buy records. So 7, 8, 9 years old. This is even before disco became a genre. It was just coming into play. I get a lot of records, and I built a small record collection of 45s up over a few years, and I knew the music. They say it's like having an audiographic memory. You remember things through music. So I remember, 73. I didn't know nothing about Kool Herc throwing this rec party, but, this is what it went on to become, that he threw the first hip hop party. And my problem with this is you can't start a scene without having the music that makes the scene. So the first hip hop records, right, came out July 1975, not 97, 1979. Let me get it straight.
Yeah.
King Tim III, right?
Yeah.
Fatback Band, Spring Records, came out probably in the spring of 79. It got popular for the summer. I know this because 1979, I roller skated a lot as a kid. And at 13, Washington Square Park in Manhattan was where all the roller skaters would go. And they'd make me mind the radio if the cops came, because they'd tap into the light pole for the radio for the juice to plug it in. Because them radios ran on like 20D batteries and they didn't last the whole day. So we'd have to tap into the light pole. But King Tim III was Fatback Band, which was a soul band. And at the end of the track, there was a rap on it. And it usually came from the radio. Frankie Crocker is a known radio DJ from WBLS, would come and do these soliloquies and like, they kind of like rap things. And you'd find them on records like Secret Weapon, Must Be the Music. It wasn't like a full rap. It would be like a song. And then, they have a little rap piece on the end. Sugar Hill Gang came along in October 79, right? And that's when Rapper's Delight blew up. That is your beginning of hip hop. You had a whole summer of chic good times playing, good times. And then the DJs would take good times and scratch that breakup, and rappers would rap over it, which became Rapper's Delight. Now you have hip hop records. You had that. Then you had like Funky 4+1. You had like Super Rhymes. These are all records that came out like right after Rapper's Delight and started a little buzz on hip hop. Then hundreds of these unknown hip hop artists would come out. Spoonie G, you listen to Spoonie G just going on for 15 minutes telling stories, and that is your beginning of rap. Whatever happened from 73 to 79 in those 6 years, yeah, there was parties in parks. They were doing, Bambaataa was definitely one of the early guys. Rest in peace to Bam. And, that even with Bam just leaving us a few weeks ago on a sad note with all this internet chatter that goes on, I just want to talk about the music. I don't know what Bambaataa did behind closed doors. What I do know is that a lot of people are not happy with that. And I'm not judge, jury, or executioner. I'm just telling my experience. So what I know is Kool Herc, Grandmaster Flash, Bambaataa were your first 3 guys that were known for taking sound systems into the parks in the Bronx. Jazzy J was part of this, and I met Jazzy early on in 85. I met Bambaataa early on. But I've never been in the hip hop scene. I've just been a New Yorker that was into music, which turned into disco, dance music, which turned into house, techno. But I grew up hip hop. In fact, like the first rave that we ever threw, coming back from Britain after witnessing it, I threw a party in a junkyard. We broke into a junkyard and we tapped the light post into the pole. 6:30 in the morning, the sun came up, right? Power goes down on the lamppost. All the power goes down on the music. There was only 30 of us there, but we were having the time of our lives. Once the music shut off, nothing to plug back into. So my theory is, if we would have known this, we would have rented a generator. But I guess no hip hop party went past sunrise for them to know that the power goes down once the light post shuts down. So I was like, damn, if I would have known that. But, you know, you learn, you discover things. And it was a lot of, you know, we were doing a lot of things just off of like what I knew about the streets and hip hop is how we got the rave scene to, you know, go in New York City.
Frank, I've got something for you, which I've pondered over, right? Okay. Obviously, I want to touch on your graffiti. But one thing that I've always marveled over, right, is that you can go back to the late 60s right through to the late 70s around New York, and there's an abundance of graffiti documentaries from Japanese filmmakers, Dutch filmmakers, British filmmakers. Yeah. So we have this myth that there was all these block parties for hip hop in 73, 74, 75. Right. Yet we have Japanese, Dutch and English come into where you live, supposedly where all these block parties are with thousands of hip hoppers. Right. Yet they managed to find all of this graffiti and all of these trains and graffiti writers, but no documentarian from Europe or Japan is curious enough to know what these block parties are. You don't see videos of this hip hop scene until like 78, 79. Right. Can you break that down now that you've heard a curious Brit put that in your brain?
All you got to do is look up the Kool Herc, you know, the August 11th, 1973. Kool Herc had a great idea. He's in the projects, 1520 Sedgwick Avenue. You know, all the projects have like a little room in it that you throw, I don't know, little events in, like for 30, 40 people. They're not huge rooms. He had the idea that he'd take the rec room in the building and throw a little jam. And, you know, listen, there was music back then. There was DJ culture, but you have to separate DJ culture from graffiti culture, from, you know, hip hop culture. There are pillars. There are pillars. If you look at the pillars of hip hop, like, you know, KRS-One will tell you hip was having the knowledge, hop was the dance. So if it was techno rave, techno would be the knowledge and rave would be the dance. So we kind of followed through in a similar pattern, but Kool Herc throwing this party in 1973. Yeah, he had a great idea. He wanted to play some music for 30 people in the building because these rooms weren't like clubs, or they were just a rec room. Couple people come. You're putting 25 cents to admission, all ladies free. It says it on the index card. Look it up. Yeah, he had a brilliant idea, and you know we got to give Kool Herc he is the father figure. I would put myself in Rave in a similar, and you know me and Kool Herc did do a party together in 2016. They were making room to build these huge projects, not projects, but high-rise luxury buildings in the Bronx. And I wound up getting to play a rave that they did when they knocked down the old tenements to build these new buildings. These real estate people, really rich people, wanted to have a rave there, and we did it, and it was kind of amazing. And you know, Kool Herc to me for DJ culture, he's major important. So there's nothing taken away, but he has Jamaican heritage, and you know, a lot of Jamaican heritage in Kingston, Jamaica, with reggae and the sound systems comes from Jamaica. So maybe, you know, a reggae scene that he was playing all different types of, you know, music that wasn't hip hop. I mean, listen, Soul Makossa, very big record in the early 70s. A lot of the R&B, being a DJ and blending that music up doesn't make it a hip-hop scene. Now, if you talk about graffiti, right, you asked about graffiti. So if you look at the graffiti writers that were huge, right, especially ones from the Bronx, Blade, Comet, those are your typical African-American, very talented graffiti writers from the Bronx. These guys weren't listening to hip hop, or they were into hard psychedelic rock. Blade. You look at any of Blade's work, it was all LSD, straight up LSD rock, whatever was big in rock music. So there's no connection for the music with that. Yeah, a lot of like, you know, Scene, another classic hip hop writer, they all listen to like rock music. We listen to rock music in the 70s, but as for hip hop, disco came along. Disco is what took DJ culture and pushed it on. And then disco died in 1980. That's when hip hop, 79, 80s, when you could say, hey, that's the beginning of it all.
Yeah. I want to, as a record man, because I know you love your records, right? I want to throw Lightning Rod, Hustlers Convention, 1973, into the mix of this trajectory, because, come on, Lightning Rod, Hustlers Convention is more hip hop than a whole bag of hip hop that come 10 years later. So Lightning Rod Hustlers Convention needs to be.
But if you look at all,
as well.
yeah, I mean, Hustlers Convention, see, they were calling that life is music, like life is meaning if you're in jail and using jail slang and talking about, and you know, it's not to say that people didn't rhyme music. There are like instances where there was somebody that actually did a rap on a record, like in the 1950s down in the New Orleans scene. There are a few things will come up on the internet, and yeah, they're kind of rapping, but the thing is, it's not really catching on. It's just, you know, usually in music you rhyme words. So to say it as a, you know, like, listen, Rap is the Light was the minute when that was like lit up, where people knew. Anything before that was just like a fluke that, you know, they had a moment. You know, they had a record called Jocko Rhythm Talk in 1978, but it's like the radio DJs on FM radio would rhyme words and do little soliloquies and little poems, but it wasn't something where it would catch on in the streets like wildfire. It's the same thing with Rave and Techno. There was records that were like that going back. We'll touch on that later. But I mean, you know, to say as a culture, Rave as a culture didn't start until 1988 when they came back from Ibiza. In America, we say Ibiza, and here it's Ibiza. I'll say Ibiza. But, you know, they had to have that little meeting. And who was there? It was Danny Rampling, Paul Oakenfold, two other guys. I should know their names, but why the hell is it not registering right now? I'm coming off topic too, but anyway, Alfredo was the guy in Ibiza. That was the DJ that played Balearic music, and he played a wide variety of tunes, a lot of Euro pop. But these guys went there, and they saw the potential of what the DJ could mean in a scene. And then Danny Rampling went back and started Shoom, and it all came out of that. Now, I wasn't there to witness that. I came on the tail end. But Energy, when it became what it was that was kind of the moment it arrived in the UK, because everyone in the UK heard about it, and now we're doing it.
Like you go, you're Frankie Bones. Yeah. It's just coming out of your brain, all of this stuff. I want to, before we get to this point, we got to talk about Bones, the graffiti artist.
Yeah, I came later though. I mean, so this is interesting too. Again, it's kind of cliche that the fact that when I was born, my parents lived in an apartment building that the windows of my bedroom faced railroad subway tracks for the Brighton line, which was the D line, the M line, and the QB at the time. 3 different train lines, 24/7 trains going by my window. So I kind of grew up like when I hear trains going by, like, and I'm sleeping on, it's very comforting to me. Like, you know, some people have airplanes coming over their house or cars, but trains were very soothing. The click clack of the tracks. And then Kraftwerk came out with Trans-Europe Express in 1977, which is, you know, Trans-Europe Express, metal on metal. So it kind of, you know, the wheels of steel. This is why we get up to the part with hip hop with Grandmaster Flash, because they're saying that, you know, Grand Wizard Theodore was doing scratching before Flash. Again, like hip hop, Grandmaster Flash was the one that brought it into the light. And how I know this is Grandmaster Flash, The Amazing Adventures on the Wheels of Steel, right? This is a record that came out in 1981 where it was a record that was made out of records, right? There was no instrumentation on this vinyl. This was just one guy manipulating wax on one turntable and another to make a new record out of that. And that's basically where I just got engulfed in it, because I was like, if you could make a record out of records, that's what I want to do. And, you know, Grandmaster Flash came out pretty early, had the record Freedom, which followed Rap is the Light by 6 months. Like, if you look at the early Sugar Hill like catalog, the early Enjoy Records catalog, and a couple other records like the Super Rhymes and the Spoonie Cheese.
Some live bands.
Yeah, and exactly. Like Pumpkin was one of the guys that did the drums, and they were just like session musicians, right? Yeah, and Pumpkin was definitely one of them guys, because they were going in. So if you look at the history, Good Times by Chic, right? That's a disco record, you know, for the summer. Then they did the Rap is the Light, where the session band would come in. Then Queen goes and does another one, Bites the Dust, which was the biggest track in 1980. And it's a rock band, you know, Queen. And looking at Queen, they did a record called Bohemian Rhapsody in 1975. So the word rap was in their song in 1975. But looking at Queen, they did another one by same bass line. Boom, 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 boom. Then all the rappers started taking another one bites the dust beat. You could tell it's not Good Times anymore, but it's the same beat. Maybe the bass line had a different note in it. Then Sugar Daddy came out with Another One Bites the Dust. And it's just funny how the rap thing kind of, now you have hundreds of rap records coming out. 1980, and disco pretty much died. They didn't call disco after 79, 80. It became dance music. So you had all these other like influences. Italo disco was a thing. Kano, I'm Ready. A lot of like Casso, Key West. But I mean, 1980 was a weird year for music because it was all changing at that point for the 80s. But yeah, I mean, but hip hop was strong from that point on. It went right through. I was in gold. I'd take the train to the city and buy every rap record. It didn't matter what it was. I know the second Sugar Hill Gang record, not Sugar Hill Gang, but Sugar Hill Records, the sequence, Tear the Roof Off. I bought that. I remember going to the store and asking a lady, is this a rap record? And she goes, no, that's not a rock record. And she just looked at me because I was a little white kid. She thought I said rock. I said rap. I don't even know if she knew what rap was at that point. But I was an avid collector of 12-inch music. And one of the guys that did all the early independent stuff, his name is Peter Brown, not the disco artist, but a guy named Peter Brown. You find his name on a lot like the Spoonie G record. And he used to come to my record shop and tell us stories about those days, about, you know, walking around with like carts full, like a shopping cart full of records, walking to record stores, selling them out of the cart itself. I'm like, man, that's like before the trunk, just walking with the cart selling records, hearing these stories and just be like, you know, I was doing this around the same time, so I was actively buying the music, and it was great times in New York in those days.
You said you'd go record shopping, you'd look out your window, you'd see the trays.
Yeah.
Would you tag on the way to the record shop?
Yeah, well, I did.
I
gotta get more into the graffiti end of it. So, like I said, when I was born, my windows had the trains going like right out my window, but the park that I lived next to was called Kelly Park. The train would split the park in two. So you had this side of the park and that side of the park. And I was not allowed to go in the other side of the park because that park was under development. It was wrecked. Like there was nothing left of it and they were rebuilding it. And I was maybe 4 or 5. And my dad would always tell me, don't go in the park around the corner. So one day I'm on my little Schwinn bicycle at maybe 5 years old, and I'm going into the park around the corner on the day that the mayor is coming to lay ground that they're rebuilding a park on ABC News. And here I come on my little tricycle by myself, and I get on the news and my dad sees it, and I get home. He's like, where were you? I was like, oh, I was in the park over here. Oh, no, you weren't. I know you were in the park over there. I'm like, no, I wasn't. And then he told me I was on the news. And I'm like, what's the odds of that happening? You know, so I got caught. I got a little spanking for that. Yeah. And then, you know, I went to kindergarten and first grade in that neighborhood before we moved in 1973. And then when we got to the new neighborhood, that's when I started collecting records. Or my dad would be buying records for me. I had a little turntable, and the graffiti thing didn't come right away for me. It came years later when I realized that you could write your name on a train and actually see it. And this kind of happened on the first day of high school for me. So I was a bit older. My first day of high school, we were at the lunchroom and this kid was talking about his graffiti tag was NET, N-E-T, and that you could go on any train and see his tag. And I didn't know the person. I turned around to him and I'm like, hey, yeah, I heard you talking about trains. I'm going to take you up on your offer. I'm going, you know, I buy records. I'm going to go to the city on the train. He goes, you always see my name on every train. So I go on the first train, the M train, one stop to get the express. I get on, I see NET all over the inside of the train. Get on the express train, I see NET all over the train again. I took 6 trains that day and saw his name on every train. I was totally immersed by it. That first day of high school. So second day of high school, I go back in. How old would you have been? I guess the first day of high school is like what? So 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. I probably was 16, maybe 15 or 16. Okay. Now, mind you, I did see graffiti beforehand. There was a guy that wrote Miko who did like political. He threw the Mexican flag and it would say Miko and it'd be like a political statement with it. So it never caught on to me, but I saw his stuff all the time. Until I did this high school thing and found out you could actually see your name on the train. And this kid NET was like, became my
inspiration.
Not even inspiration. We became partners like right away. So what happened was when I realized his name was all over the trains, I was snuck into my dad's room. My dad worked for the transit authority. He was a road car inspector, so he had all the keys to all the trains. So
amazing.
Yeah, this is totally amazing story because I took one of his actual keys, which is a skeleton key it's got a little bend in it. So, these kids would try to take skeleton keys. I know, like in the UK, like skeleton keys open all the doors back in the day. You have to take a wrench and try to bend it a certain way. The key might work, but I gave my friend Ned the original key. So we go to school the next day. I'm like, yo, I want to give this to you. I give him the key and his eyes just lit up. He's like, where do you get this from? I'm like, yo, my dad's a road car inspector. I know the trains really well. I just never rode on any of them. So then he took me to my first little missions on the trains, and we learned the layups, which were they parked the trains at night, and we started tagging. And within a year, started seeing bones on all the trains because we were going every day. Graffiti culture is like this. When you get into it, it immerses you. It becomes, part of your soul. So we were writing like every day for years and stuff. And I've never gotten caught. Been in some squirrely situations, but and that became my partner. It's interesting. If you look at like the Ramones Subterranean Jungle, the album, you could look this up on Google. The whole album is fake graffiti that the Ramones did on the album. It's like almost like Photoshop, but in the 70s, we didn't have Photoshop, or the 80s. So they just wrote and made it look like it was right down the train. And on the B side, like the flip of the album, there's a door opened up. And you see Net coming down the doorway. It's the only real graffiti on the album cover. And the way my boy Net wrote graffiti, when he wrote his name NET, he write it down, and it was very box perfect. So it's like the ultimate tag. And then, we became known Net and Bones. We had a couple other people in our crew, and we were all over. We would go all over the place. And, I've gotten my names gotten on, on the Beastie Boys Solid Gold album, 2005.
Love this story.
They're standing there. They are young. I mean, they are young, and the Bones tag is going down the side of the wall, and one of them are blocking it, but you could see it says Bones. Like, if you see it and I tell you the story, it's definitely me.
It's definitely
I remember taking the tag in 1984, so, and I was with Net. We went riding one day, and I was like, hey, I want to just take this Bones tag down the side of the base of the Manhattan Bridge. And I did it, and it got in this album cover. And then in Madonna's movie, Desperately Seeking Susan, she's coming out of the door, and it says Bones straight down the door. So, you think we were writing our names repetitively all day long for years, which, with our music, it's repetitive music. So kind of goes hand in hand. But yeah, I got my name up there. Yeah, I was definitely somebody doing it. I was never a great, doing art and pieces. I never was great at it. I did my thing though,
Yeah, it's my mind boggles like your mind boggles as you fire all of this life out, because it's like the cultural significance of understanding hip hop.
Yeah.
The cult and being in New York and growing up in New York, the cultural significance of getting your tag up and appearing in a Madonna film with your tag.
Yeah,
and
crazy.
And your Beastie Boys press shot, which becomes an album cover in it further down the line. We haven't even got to music yet. You make
I can take this one step further too. On. So one of the neighborhood kids who was a friend of mine that wasn't really a graffiti writer, he used to write M&T for Marty and Teresa, his girlfriend. We'd be tag along guy. He wasn't really a writer. In Beach Street, the movie, they get on the train and you see up on top, it says M&T on the ceiling. This kid only wrote his name thing, and we always make fun of him. He'd be like the kid we're making fun of. And you don't see Bones and Net nowhere, but we were the ones that took him to get the M&T on the ceiling of the train. So it's kind of like, life slapping you in the face. Like, you're making fun of them. You didn't see my tag, but it's definitely see that M&T, and it's up there for a minute. So it's like there. But yeah, I mean, like even when Beach Street came out, we cut out of school to go see the movie. We were really, you had the breakdance thing was very big in 82, 83, 84. We love breakdancing.
Did you break dance?
I did, but I wasn't really good at it. I was in a crew, but I wasn't.
Breaking bones, not
so I became the guy. Yeah, I've never broke a bone in my body, by the way. Knock on wood. But I used to take the breakdancer kids to the graffiti lamps with us, and I became the guy that got them into writing graffiti. So, because I was well involved in, I love the mission. I just love the mission of going into the train tunnels. And, first time I jumped off a train platform to run into a tunnel, it was like jumping into the underground to see the world, because like basically that's what underground was to me. We were doing underground missions with tags and underground music, and that's what got me to come to the UK and never look back. And
Yeah.
I had a really, it was interesting. I mean, I did have a couple of injuries where I hurt myself. I poked myself in the eye on the end of a fence where I had a microsurgery on my tear duct and like almost went blind. And I was under a train when it pulled out, and I'm trying to get out from under the train with the third rail being next to me, and almost died doing that. So, you know, there was a couple of missions where, you know, you wind up hospitalized or just almost like near death experiences. You know, and I stopped by the time I was 18, but I had a good 4-year run that I really enjoyed doing all those missions.
So life-threatening in the pursuit of getting your tag up as much as you possibly could.
And yeah,
you fulfilled my inquisitiveness about graffiti, but at the same time, your record shopping, and you know, you've already brought that into play. Explain to me New York record shops, the age that you was at, and discovering music. You've already mentioned disco. You've mentioned noticing that Grandmaster Flash Adventures of On the Wheels of Steel, you're actually hearing samples or what would become samples rather than the live bands. It immersed me in the record shop experience as a young teenager in New York.
See, this is good because in the UK, you guys had Woolworths. We had Woolworths, right? Woolworths was the same, you know, Woolworths like a general department store where you buy things. So in Woolworths, you'd have the record department, and a lot of the like stores back in the 70s had record departments. So I remember like my parents were clubbers, right? They started going out to discos when I was like 9, like 75 is when the discotheque era began in nightlife culture in New York. So you had a lot of clubs like, all right, so the first DJ I ever heard of, my parents were going out to this place called La Mouche, and Walter Gibbons was the DJ at the time. So Walter Gibbons, I heard the name a lot. He's probably the first guy I ever knew. And Walter Gibbons pretty much was the guy that kind of invented the 12-inch giant single, because everything was on 45s before that. And these records would just come out with the one song on around 1975. I know Double Exposure, 10%, South Soul Records was the first commercial record ever released that was on a big, you know, 12-inch rather than a 45. Before that, you had to play 45. So when you put one song on a 12-inch, it gives this, you get more space between the grooves, which gave it a larger and more louder, you know, pressing.
12-inch is always a far louder and weightier than a 45.
Yeah, so even if you go back to 73 again, there was no 12-inch records to be playing. So that was birthed out of the disco era. It wasn't birthed out of hip-hop, or because, again, it didn't happen yet. Disco happened in 75. You had the disco single, 1976, 77, 78, 79, and then disco died in like 1980. It had a 6-year run. My parents would go to these clubs, and Walter Gibbons was the DJ, and I'd be hearing, how he played one song, and it would blend into another song, and I didn't know what the mixing component of it was. I was still very young. I was, now I'm like 10 or 11. The first time that I knew what a DJ did with mixing records was at a roller skating rink in 1978. My mom dumps me off at this roller skating rink that they just built. It was like a really nice roller skating rink, like a club. And then I learned DJing from there because I get to see what the DJ is doing. And I was immersed in that too. So the disco era definitely played a big part of whatever was yet to come. But going back to buying records, like Woolworths, they have a record department. Any of the chain stores. I remember Rock and Soul Records, which is still a true record store in New York City to this day.
Wow.
50 years, right? So they just celebrated 50 years. They opened in 1975. So I remember either my parents would go to club and come home, and then we'd go shopping in Manhattan. My dad would drive to the city, but Rock and Soul had these record charts that had little boxes, and they'd have their top 50 or top 100 records. And you take the list and you check the boxes of the records you want. 45s they were. So it's like ordering Chinese food. You check in boxes. You want number 1, number 7, number 12, number 15. And my dad would buy all the records that they heard at the club that weekend. So he was bringing home the records that either Walter Gibbons or whatever the DJ was playing. And you'd buy them off these charts like that Rock and Soul. And they're still there. I I sold a lot of my own records to Rocket Soul over the years, but they've been there 50 years. I remember when they first opened, you had a few record stores in New York. You had Downtown Records, you had there was Downtown Rock and Soul. There was other ones. Disco Mat was a large one because they had multiple stores. You had J&R Music World, which had a disco booth that only sold dance music and disco stuff. So Bondi's, these were record stores that were around in the 70s. There's a lot more. It's not coming to the top of my head.
Frank,
But
I've bought a lot of records off of American sellers over the years, and sometimes when they come in the house bag or still in the shrink wrap,
yeah.
Sometimes it says grocery on them. Grocery.
Yeah.
Explain that to me. Like asking an American, like.
Okay, like the grocery stickers were just like if you were in a store that has sold multiple, like department stores that sold clothes, and they might have like a area they sold food, and they just used the price gun that said grocery to price up the records because it's a record department. Maybe they didn't have the stickers for the record department that week, so they just used the grocery stickers.
Yeah,
which would be really confusing to me too if I saw that. But yeah, it happened.
But you as an American understand it. But me as a Brit, you know, decades later, buying lots of records off American grocery, like it's but I must have 30 or 40 records from American sellers that says grocery on the sticker.
They used to drill holes. They take a drill and drill a hole through the cover, so you'd have a little hole, which means it was like a cutout that they were selling cheaper or discounted, or they would saw off the side of the end top, so you'd have like a cut corner. And cut corner records were just like, I don't know, promotional records that they still, cutouts that they would still sell for, you know, maybe a bargain price or. You know, and I love the bargain records. I was totally into looking for used records and secondhand and bargain from the beginning. Yeah.
Cutouts are a fascinating thing because you spoke about sequence earlier. The first cutout I ever brought was a sequence album.
Oh, wow. Okay.
From Music Power in Haringey, which is just up the road. It's not there anymore. But that's when I first learnt about cutouts in '86, that they were surplus records that didn't sell from 5, 10, 15 years before, so the record labels would. So anyone who's got records, especially soul, funk, rock, pop, that have a corner cut out, they would be sold for half the price, 75% of the price 5, 10 years later.
Right.
And that cut was to indicate this is a cutout. Don't pay much for this. And cutout in black music stores was a big thing. The emporiums would say soul, funk, disco cutout. To encourage people to come in to the store.
To get, you know, the discount records. And there was places that were known to just do that, those type of records. Yeah, amazing. That, like, I was a record guy, so I go anywhere to get records. And, you know, being young, I didn't have a lot of money, but you know, there was always like, you guys had the boot sales, we had flea markets, and I mean, I built a large amount of records up at a young age, so it's amazing.
Just coming quickly into the present time, what I love about you is last week you've come from New York and you're shopping in London for records.
Absolutely.
I was in New Yorker and I was in Palmer shopping for records. Here we are, over 100 years of age between us. And we still can't stop buying records.
I love it. I mean, records to me is what built my character, built my career, and I wouldn't be the person I am today without it. I do digital now. Whatever's current, I do, you know, but it's just signs of the times. I mean, if you don't come from really like vinyl and turntables, I don't say you're not a DJ because you haven't, but I mean, if I was just coming up as a DJ now, I'd want to learn on vinyl just to know how it was when it began, because that's what DJ culture came from.
Yeah, it's a very unique skill, isn't it? Can you remember your first times DJing to people and how old you were and what kind of music you was playing?
So, I mean, my first DJing gigs, and this is, you know, I mean, we're going to get into like the later on part, but like, you know, the story goes that my father was murdered when I was 18. A lot of people know this story. It's not a sad story anymore because I'm going to be 60 now, and my father had like lived on through me. But like my first paying gig was 1984 into 1985 at a local pub, local club, local bar in the neighborhood. I got paid $200 to do New Year's Eve from 84 to 85. My dad was murdered on January 28th, 1985. So my dad saw my first gig, me getting money for playing in a bar, and he couldn't believe it because My dad was collecting records as long as I was alive. He was like always saying, there's nobody in the world that's going to give you money on a steady basis just playing records. Because if there was, do you think I wouldn't have done that? You know, my dad worked a day job and then he had his cab job at night, and he worked like 16 hours a day every day. So he worked for the transit authority from 9 to 5, and then from like 5 to like, I don't know, 4 in the morning, drive a taxi cab just to keep, you know, the bills paid and have a house and pay a mortgage, and wound up dying in his 16-hour work, getting shot by someone that robbed him, which I would never be able to do Uber now or drive anybody because of that. It just was something that happened when I was 18, and my dad got to see me get paid that money and was so happy for me right before he passed. And I got hell-bent after that. I was like, I don't want to just make $200 at a local pub. I want to go out there. I want to become the guy that goes into Manhattan and gets it like, you know, Larry Levan or Jelly Bean. And in those days, like clubs like the Funhouse, the Paradise Garage, everybody knows the Paradise Garage. That's the club in New York everybody knows. One guy gets that spot, which was Larry Levan. And, you know, to become a DJ in Manhattan and have a residency, very hard to do it. When I was coming up, it was like, I don't think I'll ever be able to do that, because, you know, how many people get the chance to fill that slot? And then the Rave kind of scooped me up and took me over to England. So that was like luck. And I always believed that, you know, when my father was gone, he was close to my heart, and maybe he had something to do with my, you know, trajectory going through rave culture. Because I mean, I lived through something with Rave that if you were 6 months before me, let's say Todd Terry, or before me, or let's say the crew right after me 6 months, I mean, you know, like Lenny D, Joey Beltram, our whole crew that was making the records did very well in these markets over here. But you only had a window of like a year to get in to where it started. Like Todd Terry's records were immensely huge in the rave scene, but not quite in the rave scene itself. You didn't see Todd Terry playing a lot of raves. That came kind of afterwards. Major inspiration to us, but to Mantronics. There you go, because like Mantronics, King of the Beats, right? That record, when I came to England and played Energy, we were there for a couple hours. Whoever played before me, both DJs played King of the Beats by Mantronics. That, mind you, is the ultimate Amen Breaks track, right?
100%.
Of all Amens, King of the Beats was the Amen track.
Yeah.
And then here comes Bones. I get up on stage all like nervous and squirrely because there's all these people there. We dropped that Success and Effect record. That just laid the foundation for the future. And anybody can listen to Success and Effects, those bass beats when they come on, in that beginning with the little choppy edits that, you know, Felix Samo is an editor DJ from Miami, worked on Power 96 radio. You know, we do all these edits on reel to reel where you're cutting tape and you're making all these like kind of crazy passages of music. What he did to that 808 on, and with the 808 on that Amen break on Success and Effect, man, changed lives from that moment on. And just to be there at that point in time was just amazing. You know, we came over with a lot of knowledge of our own stuff, but we had no idea what was going on here. So
I've got two things going through my head. I've got two questions. One is did you experience Larry Levan? And two, I wanted you to paint which you started to do with your father, which is incredibly sad, a picture of life in New York. Did you have jobs, you know, before you started producing music out of that? So yeah, experiencing Larry Levan.
Well, I mean, I was too young to go to the Paradise Garage. So, you know, we were like, when we were writing graffiti in the city, we would walk around the neighborhoods and like, you know, I've heard music coming out of Paradise Garage, but like, that's not experience the club for itself. But I definitely remember like being like, we were on like a little graffiti adventure and I heard this song by Gwen Guthrie, It Should Have Been You. And the first time I heard the song came out of what I was hearing in the streets from the club. We were like writing in the neighborhood. And I knew that song that Larry actually played it in the club, and I was somehow outside the club to hear it, to go buy it on Monday. But no, I was never. Yeah, I mean, because you could do that. You could be the music. The garage had such a loud sound system that if you were outside, you could be anywhere like around the block area, you would hear the music. So I mean, I didn't really spend a lot of time doing that, but it's just one night we were writing graffiti somewhere down by House Street on the west side. And it happened to be, we walked by the club and I heard that song, and I knew, I heard the lyrics, and went back to JR Music World at Disco Booth on Monday and was like, hey, do you have a song called It Should Have Been You? And I got the record because of that. So, but we didn't do that often. Now the Funhouse was Jelly Bean's club, and I had a mentor. My DJ mentor was a guy named Tony Torres. Tony was the neighborhood record store guy. So I was about 12. I walked in the record store one day. I heard this record in the roller skating rink called Walk the Night by Scat Brothers. Casablanca Records. It's a disco record, but it was like kind of a cliche disco record that you wouldn't really hear on the radio, or it was more for, the late night crowd and like Crisco Disco. So it would be like if you weren't in the gay scene per se, you wouldn't know this music. So when a 12-year-old walks in the record store and goes, hey, you got Walk the Night, I got this weird look, like, well, how do you know that song? Because it came from a different, end of the music. So I was like, I heard it at the roller skating rink. And then, Tony was maybe 4 or 5 years older than me. So if I was 12, he was 17. He worked at the record store. So he just came up the way I did. One day, my parents take me to the roller skating rink, and it was in Long Island. It's 30 miles away, and Tony wound up being the DJ on the night that I went to the roller skating rink with my parents. So he started taking me with him to get his record pool records. We didn't have GPS back then, so I became the navigator. I know how to get from Brooklyn to Manhattan. You got a car, I'll direct you there. You could double park your car because you can't park there. You could go get your records. I'll sit in the car. You bring the records back down. We go home. That's what we're doing. So now I'm writing all the records down on the index cards, making record charts, because now he's getting the latest records before everybody. So this is how I know Planet Rock came out on April 17, 1982, because I wrote it down on a card. I was keeping track of it.
What a memory.
And I have pictures of it. It's like, as easy as I can show you the index card of the Cool Herc Party, I could show you the index card where I wrote down Planet Rock when it came out.
Love it.
And, the record pools would give you the records. They were for the DJs. You'd had to have a working job in a club, and there was maybe 50 to 100 members of like For the Record or IDRC, or these were the big record pools. VIP was in the Bronx. I got in VIP years later. And you get, the companies would service the record pools to the DJs, and then that's how you got the records. And, I mean, Tony Torres was like my guy, like for that. Like, one day we went to the Fun House. I was real young, and he knew Jelly Bean really well. And I got in. I was 15 years old. I mean, a lot of young teenagers were in the club, but I looked really young. So I never thought I would actually witness it, but I went there a few times, and that was the club, man. I mean, if you look at the Funhouse overall, like we could talk about Paradise Garage, with the Funhouse, this is where Run DMC came out with Here We Go, live at the Funhouse. Look at the record. It was done live in the club. Madonna, Beastie Boys, all these people came out of the Funhouse scene. It was, where the garage was more like, it was different. It wasn't the street that kids of Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, we all converged on a Funhouse. Breakdancing was big there, and it was an amazing time. That's like 1983. But to see Madonna was dating Jelly Bean at the time. I mean, he's DJing in Giant Clown's Mouth, and you see Madonna in the booth with him, and you're 15, 16 years old. It's like, yo, that's what I want to do. You know what I mean? That's really it. We were watching it, and I'm like, yo, I have to become a DJ now, because that's all I knew. So
before we get on to your first producing and other DJ gigs that you had, paint the picture of New York, because we've seen so much. We're told about New York through hip hop, but then you're talking about Madonna and Jelly Bean. Much more clubby, fun scene for you as a teenager. Your dad being murdered, taking in, you've taken all of this culture in, and you've played a part of it.
Yeah.
What was New York like as a teenager?
Well, let me go like this, right? I became 18 years old in 1984 in October, right? So the drinking age was still 18. We go December 4th, 1984, they raised the drinking age from 18 to 21. So I was legal for 6 weeks. Like I could have went in a club and been like, show them a resume or whatever it was to try to get the gig. Now that it's 21 and getting clubs, I had to go back and wait another 3 years. This is where the production end of it came from. Because now that I'm waiting, like that was this one major blow. My father getting murdered was one major blow. Getting out of school at that time was another. And then the drinking age. Now I got to wait till I'm 21, which will be 1987 before I could even attempt to go back into the club. So what I did was I had met Omar Santana. He was one of the best remix editors of that era. We were the same age. And he was doing edits and he started getting work from record companies. So I would tag along with him. And then we started producing together. And by the time I was able to go back in the clubs, we already had some records under our belts. So I was able to, get in with some clubs from the music. But New York was grimy. It was dangerous. We were living in a time where it was just like the city had no money. So the trains were all graffitied up, old, broken up. And it was exciting because of all this music and, freedom to write and then do, pretty much do whatever you want to do. But it was dangerous. There was a lot of muggings. You go record shopping in New York, you could get mugged on the way in and the way out. It's just how the streets were. It's like the Warriors, the movie The Warriors is a lot like that. So, it was dangerous, but, we got some beatings, with crews fighting and stuff, but made it through. And just the music was always more important than anything to me. So no matter how I had to get it, I would get it, so it's a very interesting time. So
it's really, really interesting because I'm absolutely fascinated with New York. I'm fascinated with the rise of hip hop. I'm fascinated with freestyle music. I'm fascinated with disco music, graffiti, all the different cultures.
Yeah.
That come out of it, the crack epidemic, all of these.
Yeah, that's it. The crack epidemic is why my father got murdered. It was a crazy time. It was right in the beginning of that. People were going crazy on the streets with the crack epidemic. And my dad drove a cab and it was late at night and he got robbed. And it just take, one moment and the guy pulled out a gun. My dad was always like a hero type of dude. He might have lunged at the guy to grab the gun. We don't know, but he took one bullet in the neck and he was gone, I mean, and it could have been worse. It could have been like he might have got hit by a bullet and then became a vegetable or something, which I would be a worse scenario. So I just carried his message to me as a kid through me, and it still is through me to this day. And it was hard in the beginning. You lose. I never was at a funeral or at a wake. I didn't know anybody from dying. And then the first person to leave when I'm 18 is your main figure is your dad, right? And then it was kind of rough. I mean, I went through a really hard time after that, but I was hell-bent to make this music thing happen. And, in a way, I got blessed. I mean, I always ask myself, why was I the one to get thrown into the rave scene? There's DJs from America that went to the UK before me, but you have to look at it this way. You had your soul weekenders, your boot camp sale, like you go away for holidays camp at a hotel that had a boot sale or selling records, the soul weekenders, right? And I done some soul weekends and I thought they were amazing. But if you brought over Marshall Jefferson to do a soul all weekender, he's playing on a resort, you're selling music from record labels like a boot sale of records. Doesn't have the same impact as a rave. It's a whole different, a whole different thing. And in fact, when I did the soul weekenders, I thought they were great because you're just lounging out at a hotel, you're talking to record company executives, which is cool. But now taking ecstasy and going out into a field with this crazy breakbeat music, like there's a whole different level. There was a whole different level to all of that, So, whereas the music might have been here prior to the rave, until you had that rave experience, it was not the same thing.
Explain freestyle music and its importance as well on the trajectory of breakbeat house music.
I mean, you had
freestyle gets left out a lot, and it moves and I think the perfect person to explain it is a New Yorker because it was 85, 86, 87, and I fill in a lot of your early stuff. There is a freestyle influence as much as there's a breakbeat.
So, I mean, how it breaks down is in our history of DJ culture. Let's just use DJ culture here for a minute. Two records had impact on societies worldwide, which would be Rap is the Light. We spoke about this with hip hop. Planet Rock, Africa Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force, 1982. As a record to come out culturally and take over and dominate, Planet Rock is the moment where the MIDI and the rolling 808 and the taking the Kraftwerk rhythms and breaking it down to John Roby and Arthur Baker in the studio with a drum machine. Now taking that Kraftwerk sound. It's like taking Kraftwerk, guys from Germany, and throwing them onto the streets of the Bronx. Says you had the hip hop element thrown into the record as an electro record, and everything that Planet Rock spawned after that. You had Play Your Own Risk by Planet Patrol, but the electro thing became something in its own right, you know? I mean, Juan Atkins was doing Clear by Cybertron around the same time. And the funny thing is, like, as history goes, and Juan, if you're watching this, and you guys in Detroit know I love Detroit. I would never say anything bad about Detroit. However, if you listen to Cybertron Clear on the album, you know, and you listen to the 12-inch that everybody knows, the one that Missy Elliott sampled, says on the record, mixed by Jose Animal Diaz. Who is Jose Animal Diaz? A New Yorker that worked on KTU, the radio station, did edits and remixes, took Clear after hearing Planet Rock and making it sound like Planet Rock. So what you know about Clear and Cybertron, yep, Juan Atkins goes right back to the beginning. Detroit Techno, prior to Techno, was electro, Metroplex Records, all those electro records, Channel 1, No UFOs, all coming from the same, you know, trajectory, because now we have rolling 808 drum machines. Now we have rolling 909 drum machines. And everybody can make records in their houses. This is why Chicago House became House. House because now you have the machines that you can take home and make the tracks in your house. This is why New York doesn't get credit for house. We were making house music the whole way through. Visual, the music's got me. Prelude Records, 1983. That is a house record. You listen to it and you tell me. But because Timmy Regisford mixed it in a big studio, you know, the $150 an hour studio, it's not house music. But we called it dance music. But it's been there the whole time. So I don't want to take away any credit from anybody, but Planet Rock is the record that made this genre called electro. And electro, in the years that followed, you had Jam On It, Nucleus. You had Let the Music Play by Shannon, Give Me Tonight by Shannon. Shannon's records is what created freestyle. It was called Latin hip hop in the beginning, a variation of electro. But, you know, all the records that sampled Planet Rock over the years, and we just rode it through. So come 1986, and this is funny, I don't know if the date's exact, but it's pretty close. We didn't have radio that played any dance music from 82 to 86. There was no dance music radio. We had R&B stations that had mix shows like KISS and WBLS, but no actual dance music show until Hot 103 came out in August. And I'd like to say August 11th of 1986, but it's definitely during that week. It's not the same day Cool Heart threw the Rec Party in 73. But in 86, now we had a dance music station. And they came in hot. They were playing All in All by Joyce Sims, Hungry for Your Love, all the Sleeping Bag records, which was a big part, Mantronics Productions, and then Latin Rascals stuff. But it was dance music all the time. So that's when the freestyle thing began. Figure 86 went into 87, 88. Music from the streets. It was music of the fun house. It was music for the kids. And the Italian neighborhoods in Brooklyn, they went wild for freestyle. They still have freestyle concerts every year where the old Guidet and Guido guys, the Italian mafia with the big bouffant hairdos, and they're 50 years old now, and they're still going out to see C-Bank and seeing like Nocera and Joyce Sims, and they all converge and they do freestyle concerts. I just saw one on Facebook today. I was like, this is a good one. This one's got TKA in it, but when you go there, it's like, now it's like no younger kids really go. It's all older folks, but they fill up stadiums with that, or at least concert halls. It's crazy, but that's freestyle music. It's like Motown. Soulful music with lyrics that you could dance to in the 60s. So freestyle's kind of the rolling 808, have some girl amateur singers singing on it, and They still make the music, but it hasn't been popular since that era.
Yeah,
And,
it's kind of freestyle is a music, and especially the instrumentals and the dubs is of significance to the story and the trajectory of like
it's DJ culture. The
sound.
Beats, we did it for the beats. I mean, we made those records. I had a few that got on the radio, but it was the beats. Latin Rascals, they had some the edits, and it was just DJ culture at that time, you know.
Because I think a lot of people would hear the vocal versions and go, "What's Frankie and Dan talking about?"
Yeah.
If you dig out the edits, the dubs, the instrumentals, freestyle combined with the tempo of house,
right?
What you then went on to do, Bones breaks and various stuff on Full Floor. It's an influence. It's an influence.
It's
within
totally,
within the whole thing. Omar Santana is an really interesting point of this conversation. You saying you met Omar, obviously he has got some legendary edits on like
I mean
Mantronics kind of stuff. Omar, the meeting, you know.
I got out of high school, and this is like right after my dad was gone, and I was like lost. I lost his dad, and I still was into music. I got a job in an electronics store called The Wiz, which is funny because Biz Markie did "Nobody Beats the Wiz." Nobody. That was the jingle from the electronics store I worked at named The Wiz.
What? Can we get a rewind on that? Can we? If there was a rewind,
that's
podcast,
a rewind and a half.
Tell me that. Look, goosebumps. Tell me that story again.
So Biz Markie had the song. It came out later on, maybe around the Beats the Biz. Nobody. That was the jingle for the electronics store. We had two like electronic stores that were competing with each other in the 80s. It was Crazy Eddie, and if you know the story about Crazy Eddie, that guy wound up on the lam. He was laundering money to Israel. God was on the run from the FBI, and the Crazy Eddie commercials like, Crazy Eddie, his prices are insane. You can look this shit up on YouTube. Look up commercials for Crazy Eddie. So now the Wiz was their competition, and they had Nobody Beats the Wiz, Nobody Beats. That was the jingle for the electronics store. So here I am, straight out of high school. I get a job at The Wiz. My job was I took care of 13 stores where I sent the blank media, cassettes, 8-track tapes, and whatever blank audio had to go to the stores. That was my job. So I kind of liked it because I would get tapes for a good price to make my own taste with it. Kind of went along with the whole thing. But then I go to work one day, and this kid, Paul Mingo, who was a good friend of mine from school, goes, Bones, I got this mix. You're not going to believe it. And, I was the shit when I was 18. Everybody when they're teenagers like this shit. I was the shit. And I put this mix that Omar did on, and I'd never heard these were multiple added things going on where one song's answering the other song. And this is a concept the Latin Rascals invented and was very popular on the radio, but nobody knew the formula at that point. So I became friends with Omar very quick. I was like a student to his game. I'd go over his house on Sundays and I watch him do these edits, and I'm like, there's a formula. There's got to be a formula to this. Like, he's doing the edits on the beat and everything's on beat, but I'm like, how many beats per minute is the mix? He's like, 120 beats per minute. So I'm like, and how fast is the tape on the reel-to-reel moving? It's moving at 15 inches per second. So I said, we got to figure out this formula. So 120 beats per minute, let's do 120, so you got the beats per minute, and then you got 15 inches per second times 60. So if you do 15 inches times 60, you come up, and I think it was 900 was the number. What it broke down to was a beat, like boom, 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 boom. The tape's going to be 7.5 inches long, beat to beat. So in a measure, you have 4 beats. Now Omar just took a bunch of blank tape. The minute we figured out, he's like, watch this. And he takes the blank tape. He's taking these pieces of tape, taping them to the wall, hundreds of them. And now the beat's going by, and he pull a piece out and put the blank tape back in. Now you have these machine gun edits, and because of the blank tape, is making it like all choppy and like, and that was it. It was on after that. Like, it was like gun edits. It's like, listen to the Mantronics Mega Mix. I mean, we just listened to it I happened to find a copy of it when we were in Brighton the other night, and I let my boys listen. I said, listen to this, and it's just out of control because now you're restructuring the music in ways that nobody's ever done it before. And Omar got hired by every record label. He's done Rolling Stones. He did Michael Jackson. He went right to the top with edits. So
and some of them were called machine gun edits.
yeah. He had the Omar, like, you know, it would say on the label, edited by you know, to represent the edit.
And again, what's fascinating is how hard Omar's music becomes some 10 years later.
He went straight Gabba later on, you know?
Yeah. He was like just a master technician, and the snares and the edits and the vibe of it was just like so intoxicating and hypnotizing in the mid-80s. As like me hearing, I remember buying a Tila Rock breaking bells and bass machine, and it has Omar Santana edits, and you could just listen to those snares over.
Yeah, I mean, I met Tila Rock at a rave that Omar took Tila Rock to a rave with him in Connecticut, and my mind was blown away. I was like, Tila Rock, you hear at a rave? And I'm like thinking of it's yours, you know, it's like, wow, like culture shock. Yeah. But yeah, Omar definitely, without Omar, I would have never became who I am today. Now, I mean, that kid definitely rocked my world with, you know, we were going up to record companies at a very young age and people were hiring him. I got to shout out Aldo Marine from Cutting Records because Aldo looked out for all of us when we were kids. You know, we weren't making the most money by making these songs, but he was getting our music out there, you know. Like I did Karina with Carlos Berrios, Omar and Carlos Berrios. We kind of became a three-way partner, but Carlos is another guy who, with the edits, was amazing with them, where he's just getting nonstop work from record companies. I really was more into doing productions and stuff, which, you know, I mean, without the help of these guys, I would have never got in. But I mean, I did it at a young age because we were out there and we were hungry.
Yeah. What was your first release? What was the first record that has your name on it?
So the first record I did, going back to my boy Tony Torres, who was, I told you like earlier, was my mentor. He got into Roseland as a resident DJ. Roseland was like the biggest space you could have as a residency in Manhattan. We started producing records. The first record was called the Bopsy Twins by the Def City Boys. It was on Snowflake Records through Prism Records. Now, if you know Prism Records, Marley Marl started co-chilling out of Prism Records, and our label that we were on, it was Prism's label, Snowflake. But our
Prism had Nobody Beats the Biz.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that came a little bit later. Like the Snowflake Records that came out was 2 records on the label. Marley Marl did 1, and we did the other, the Def City Boys, which was produced by Tony Torres. I was on the record the first time I got a label credit. And Biz Marquis was supposed to be on that record, but because Marley knew he was starting Cold Chillin', we had to pull Biz off the record, and that was the end of that. And then my boy Tony he got into real estate and started making money in real estate. He didn't really care about DJing anymore when he actually remixed Run DMC. He was getting in with all the people with Tommy Boy Records. This is how I met Bambaataa in like 1985 or 6, because I was going to all these like meetings with my friends that were doing this shit. Like Omar knew everybody. Like he's 17, 18 years old. He knew everybody in the industry. And then one day I'm like, look, why don't we make the record from scratch? He's like, well, how are we going to do that? I was like, you know, the drum machines make the beats. We just make the beats. You find some girl to sing on it. He goes, well, we don't write songs. I'm like, but I got love letters girls wrote me in high school. I could just look at the letter and just like make the words rhyme, which became Sapphire, Don't Break My Heart, which is a huge record for Cutting Records. I didn't get credit on that record, but the Karina record I got, Out of Control, I'm on the record. So I wouldn't lie to you guys and say I wasn't part of it. But like, yeah, almost first big record was Don't Break My Heart by Sapphire, which was a very big freestyle record at the time. And, you know, I watched the process of that. Next thing you know, we're making the songs ourselves, you know, so it was an amazing time.
Yeah. What were the studios like you were using?
So INS was a studio that was very big in hip hop and dance music. It was just basically a space, a room like we're sitting in now. And they had like, you know, back then the samplers were like a lot more expensive. They were like, you only had like, the MU, you had emulator, like the emulator, there was a couple of bigger machines that you only sample like 5 seconds at a time, but they cost like a lot. And they would be all set up in a room with an engineer and a big board. Like we didn't use SSL boards, but most studios had a Sony 48 track board which took up most of the room. And then you go in, you produce, you get your stuff on tape, and you have to mix it down, and just learned like the process along the way. And studio setups were pretty big in New York at the time. You'd have to rent them out. Could be $100 an hour, but a good track would cost you $1,000 to make it in the studio until the machines came out where you can buy them, which was around 87.
Wow.
So yeah.
So with like your first lot of, say, Bones breaks, that kind of moment in time, I always talk to you about Make 'Em Rock Our Way. I don't know why, I love that record. I really hear that era of stuff. Obviously, you hadn't come to the UK yet, and it was all very. It was just like these amazing records being imported to.
Yeah, I mean, we knew about you guys too. I mean, so the Bones Breaks thing is so interesting. This is pretty much the story I've never told before, but we put out Bones Breaks 1 in probably very early 1988.
100% early,
right in the beginning. And Bones Breaks 2 came right off the back of it, maybe by 3 months. So if you have the release, let's say it came out in January of 88. By number 2, spring of 88, maybe April, we only sold 3,000 on Bones Breaks 1. And then Bones Breaks 2 came out, and we sold like 10,000. Where did the 7,000 extra records come from? And where did they go? They all went to London. So one record comes out, just sells 3,000 in America, nothing happens with it. And then 3 months later, 7,000 records are going to London for whatever reason. And whatever reason was Rave. We didn't know about this yet. So all the DJs that were in the scene then started buying these Bones Break records. And my concept on it was, we had maybe 3 different styles of music that had volumes. You had the electro compilations, which you guys put out. Was it Morgan Kahn that did it? Street Sounds.
Electro albums,
So Electro 1 came out probably in 84, like right when Electro was hot. And, we were getting these albums to New York, but they weren't frequent. They were just like, you'd see imports of them. And you guys were getting the best of, like, 8 tracks on a record. Like, you'd have to buy the 12 inches in New York to get them all, which having the album made it a lot easier. But even those electro comps were like electro, and there was a lot of hip hop on them too.
Lot of hell.
Because electro and hip hop were they were tied to the hip at the time. And then that went on for like 9 albums. And then by 84, you had the box set. You got a box set of like electro records. Right? I thought that was the coolest thing. In fact, the first time I saw the box set was at Omar's house. Omar had collected all of them and had the box set. I thought that was the coolest thing.
Fascinating to me, because like my biggest inspiration is those electros. Anyone who follows me sees all the electros.
Right, I know, I've seen it. Yo, you're right. And
then I've collected every single 12-inch on every single album.
Right. So,
but to hear you, like, to me, Omar Santana and you, like, you don't need these electro albums because you're in the heart of New York of electro and hip hop.
Right.
But to hear you say that you're as engulfed in these.
Yeah, because that was only the start of it. It was only the start of it, because then you had the Jack Tracks album that come out.
But you know what's mad? I heard many, many moons ago, I listened to an interview with DJ Cash Money.
Right.
Who's obviously Philadelphia, New York. And he was saying that when he first started coming to the UK in like 87, he felt that London and England and Manchester and Nottingham and places.
Yeah, because he was going all these places.
They were more in tune, and he could get better electro and hip hop records when he come to the UK than when he could in New York. And that blew my mind, Frankie. And now you're saying that you and Omar were inspired by the electro albums
because
coming
what
from
you
London.
did was Morgan Kahn would put these compilations together, and however he put them together, you had the best of both worlds. You had electro, because if you remember, like when Breaking the movie came out, Ice-T is doing Reckless over electro.
Yeah, he is,
and I mean, that's straight up
high
electro.
tempo, 132 BPM.
NWA Panic Zone. That's fucking electro, bro. You know what I mean? I'm saying, I mean, it's like, this is where these guys came from. And, like, even Dr. Dre, that whole West Coast Hollywood type of record release with Egyptian Lover.
World-class record.
Egyptian Lover is the one guy, he's perpetually on tour all the time. He's in places that no DJs go, and everywhere all of our people go.
Yeah,
and he just keeps going. And you see, I got upset because, like, you know, in my DJ career in the 90s, I was booked everywhere all the time. And as EDM came along, it started fading and it started fading. I thought, you know, I should be booked everywhere, and I'm not. I started going out of touch with a lot of things, and not my fault. I was still in it. Now I feel like it's coming back around, because now people need to know, like, the rave scene in the UK, the inspiration that came from electro, because anybody that DJ'd before rave in the UK played electro, played hip hop, played breakbeats. And DJ's been around in the UK way longer than the rave scene has. But whereas the soundtrack of rave is house and techno, everybody knows that electro and hip hop was just street music. Because even when house got popular here, Love Can't Turn Around, they're great songs, but they're songs, and they're like for the radio. They're not really, you could have played them out at a party, but they didn't have that edge that the rugged break beats and electro, you know, you're not going to play the electro song, but you could play the beats. And that was a big part of when I first came to the UK. I realized how important the break beats were.
Yeah, before I get into your mind about the Bones break, I want to go really deep into it and some of the inspirations. I just want to touch on Egyptian Lover. I said to a friend the other day, I think Egyptian Lover in the world of electronic music, underground music, I think he's the ultimate authenticity. Like from his first record in 83, 84 to his new music that he releases now and plays, his vibe, his style, everything, it hasn't changed. He is who he is from 45 years ago. And if I was to advise any young artist, because like we've been influenced by the rave scene, we've all gone through so many tempos, so many vibes, so because that's the way the rave moved for us across a five-year period. But Egyptian Lover has stayed the Egyptian Lover since 83, 84. It's fascinating.
I got to go out. I met Egyptian Lover in Detroit just a couple years ago. A friend of mine that was a promoter that had brought me out. It's like, yeah, I'm bringing Egyptian Lover to play on Saturday. You want to go out to meet, and we'll go out to a restaurant? And I was like, I'm at the casino over here. So he's, oh, we'll come to the casino. So I meet Egyptian Lover, and immediately meeting him, I said to him, I says, I want you to know, I don't have many elders in the scene, like people that I'd look up to. And I have to say that you were a really big inspiration to anything I've done and did, whether you know what I've done or not. I just like you to know, like, you know, when you came out, what is a DJ if he can't scratch? It's like the flip side to Egypt. Those records were very important to all of us, because it showed that there was an electro scene on the West Coast while we had one in New York, and then they had Miami bass scene. But again, Egyptian Lover, solid. Everything he did was to that. Every record is a homage to his first record, Egypt. Even if the latest thing that he just did still goes back to that 808. Like, so, you know, like Peanuts with like Linus and the Blanket, the 808, Egyptian Lover should always be Roland's main guy to promote the product. Like, that's the guy. There's nobody that believed in that drum machine more than Egyptian Lover. So there, it's very important. And I just seen over the years how he was able to take DJ culture and do what he does. We're bypassing the racing. It's DJ culture. It's him laying it down where we all listen to his music then. And when you hear it now, you get just as inspired from it, because you know how it inspired you back then. And that's,
And he's still making music.
Still doing it, like, still major. Touring all the time. It's amazing story.
He's his own lane, he's his own authenticity. And listen, if I could be the half of him, I would be a happy man. Like, what he's done is absolutely incredible. I want to get into your mind, because you didn't come to the UK till 89, correct?
Yes.
And also, yes, you can say, well, we realised that Bones Break 2 really hit in the UK
definitely
throughout 88. But you still made Bones Breaks 1 and 2 without the influence of London and England. So what was your influence for those Bones Breaks records?
I'd say, like, so when me and Lenny D met, right, we were neighborhood rivals. Like, I would have never thought that we would have ever become friends, but because Lenny was already friends with Tommy Musto. I got into the crew through Omar doing edits for Silvio Tancredi, which had Fourth Floor Records, and then New Groove Records was a subsidiary of. We were all in the same office basically. So one day I go up there with Omar he was remixing an artist called CM Dance, I think was his name, Off the Hook.
CM's, right, yes.
It was a yellow,
CMC Dance.
It was a yellow Midnight Sun record. I can't even go back that far. I think the track was called Off the Hook by CM Dance, Midnight Sun Records.
It was.
So being young, Sylvia was like, I could get you a job at the pressing plant if you need a job, because I had left the Wiz, the electronics store I worked for. So I'm like, yeah. He goes, it's a menial job. I mean, you're just going to be taking records off the press, putting them in jackets and putting them in boxes. Kind of menial. But I think it'll be a good experience for you and you can make some money. So that's what I did. So I started in May 87 at Apexton. For the first 3 months, I'm doing my job, putting the records in the jackets. I hear a song coming up from the offices upstairs on the second floor, which happened to be Todd Terry's first Masters at Work record before Louie and Kenny had Masters at Work. All Right on Fourth Floor Records. Well, what would become Fourth Floor. I hear this track and I broke the line of scrimmage where I was putting the records in the jacket, ran upstairs. What is that record you just played? Because, I had to set it off. All right. And they were like, you like that song? I'm like it. I said, if you put that record out, you'll sell 3,000 copies. The minute you have 3,000 copies, you'll sell them. And they were all looking at each other. It was the Ropiak brothers that owned Apexton and Silvio. Silvio believed in it, but the Ropiak brothers weren't really getting it. But they were two Polish guys that owned the pressing plant. They didn't really know the streets. So when I told them it would sell 3,000 copies, they were like, okay, we'll press it. And of course, they put it out and sold them immediately. And then Todd did a second, and then he did Black Riot. That's a whole nother story. And this is while I was involved with the pressing plant. So he did All Right. What was his second Masters at Work? Oh my God, I can't think of it. Excuse me, but the second Masters at Work was, he did All Right. Oh, Dum Dum Cry.
Oh, Dum Dum Cry. Of course, yeah.
Dum Dum Cry was even better than All Right.
Very bass heavy.
Yeah, and it was like Todd Terry came from freestyle like I did. We were both, we were from the same neighborhood. Like, me and Todd were also neighborhood rivals, but obviously, and I'll admit this on camera, not for the first time, I've said it before, Todd Terry inspired all of us because Todd Terry made house music very cool. He made it B-boy, he made it for the streets. Prior to that, I'm not saying Marshall Jefferson Gotta Have House Music wasn't a huge record to us, but when, Todd Terry made all, Royal House, Party People, taking the Planet Rock and then the Marshall Jefferson and smash it into one, and Bangle. All of Todd Terry's records were 100,000 records sold like immediately from early in his career. We didn't have the same kind of pull on our records. Like, all right, so like Silvio put out Black Riot, A Day in the Life. This is after the two Masters at Work that Todd did. A Day in the Life sold 40,000 units just on Fourth Floor by itself. Like, we were pressing that record for 6 weeks straight, just every week, another 10,000, another 10,000. And this is before Champion licensing.
Yeah, Champion signed.
You know what I mean? And then all the licensing.
And it cost as well, yeah.
I mean, like, and because Todd Terry's record sold 40,000, when I did the Break Boys and the Break Goes On, what would have sold 8,000 and 9,000, now selling 15,000 just off the fact that anything that came after Black Riot, A Day in the Life, people bought it because it was on Fourth Floor Records. They were like, oh, a new Fourth Floor record, let's buy it. Not saying that my End the Break Goes On was a bad record, because that was another one for me that was actually a really big track. But, I got to thank Todd Terry for everything he did, because all of us were inspired by that. And you listen to Joey Beltram's early records before Energy Flash, they were all brilliant and they were all right, but they were going right off that Todd Terry model, which also created Kenny Dope. Not many people know Kenny Dope's first records came out on my label, Breaking Bones Records. It was like, he did House Syndicate, the first one on Breaking Bones. And, Little Louie Vega also. Little Louie Vega is such a like a veteran of house music, but also was in the freestyle in the early days, so.
Yeah, what would you have called the like at the time, it's hard to, because the Bones breaks and that stuff is not house. It's not freestyle. It's not electro. What would you call it?
I mean, we were just taking up all the bits of tracks we made that we didn't finish. Like, you know, when we were making records, you had to do the punch-ins on the punch-outs on the board. So there was a lot of spare extras stuff. And a lot of it was just like programming the RZ1 Casio or the Roland 808 just beats. We went to the beats. So to call Bones Breaks was just a bunch of anything goes. It was like Bad Marriages, you know, like putting house with freestyle beats. I mean, to this day, not many people have done that, you know, to have electro beat with a house solid beat running behind it. And there are a lot of samples, a lot of mistakes that just worked. And I wanted to make, we only had Ultimate Breaks and Beats at the time, right? Of compilation albums in New York. And what Ultimate Breaks and Beats is what all the hip hop guys sampled to get the beats for their hip hop tracks. So
they changed the trajectory of hip hop.
But it was just taking the old songs and putting them on there without doing anything for them. So you would take the Aim and Break out of the Ultimate Break album and sample it off that album. Whereas Bones Breaks now, I wrote by DJs for DJs, and they were volumes, and I was just trying to put together like drum tracks with beats, and it kind of worked. I mean, Bones Breaks made it very easy for everybody in the UK once, like I didn't know this in the beginning, but you would hear Bones Breaks, and if you were English and you were a DJ, I could do that. All he's doing is running this beat over a drum machine, and it inspired a whole bunch of new producers to go out and do just that. So in a way, I made it nice and easy for everybody, because it was like, if you look at all the like records in that like kind of style where there was 4 tracks, and even alternate was Alienate. Neil Rushton, who also was the guy that coined the genre techno, when they gave that Detroit techno album to 10 records, I guess Neil Rushton had Network, he had 10 records, but Neil coined the phrase techno. Before that, the Detroit stuff got lumped in with the Chicago house thing, and it was kind of one and the same. And, you know, even Kevin Saunders has said, we didn't call it techno, we just called it dance music. And it was dance music. I mean, you know, big records were coming out of Detroit in the city, doing Big Life, and then doing, you know, good, Big Fun and Good Life. Not the good fun.
Yeah. You know what I love, Frank, when you go back to old, like, if you go back to like 87, 88, 89 Soul Train kind of programs in America, when they'd have when they'd have people like the Posse, they'd have people like Inner City, they'd have Fast Eddie, they'd have Tyree, they'd have Joe, they'd have house acts, but
Joe Smooth, right?
Pre the concept of rave, everyone would be in suits,
right? Everyone, the music industry,
the crowd would be in suits, everyone would be done up really nice. It was like the next step on from real soul and high energy dance, and
that's what we knew. We knew, you know.
And it was nothing. You can go back and listen to records that 2 years later become rave anthems in warehouses and acid parties and underground clubs in East and South London and up in Manchester and Nottingham. Whereas in England, it's people in their baggy clothes, fluorescent clothes, their kickers, their purple jogging
and
bottoms.
It all kind of merged into rave.
Whereas 2 years previous, it's black culture, it's black music, and they're getting on the programs like Soul Train with a completely different dress sense, rhythm of dance, and it's just mad how
it evolved.
It evolved into what it is. What was it like, right? How did those Bones Breaks, were they getting played in New York clubs? Because this is you've not got ecstasy in your brain when you're making music.
No, definitely not.
You don't know what energy. No one knows what energy is yet.
Yeah.
You've not been to England to experience an acid house party. You've not been to Ibiza to experience Balearic beats. You're making these records from a vibe within, with no understanding of Europe. And were they played in New York?
I mean, I think the Bones Breaks were like, basically they were tools for other DJs that were coming up. Yeah, some of them got play a little bit, but it wasn't a big deal in America as it was to here, because like we knew that those 7,000 records extra on Bones Breaks 2 came to London, which made us very curious on how, which was Rave. So when we first got told about Rave, it was not anything any American could understand, but we understood it because DJ culture was kind of running rampant here. Now, from the rave culture. A lot of DJs came out of that era. And like I'm saying, you know, the DJs that were around before rave here, you know, different cities, Bristol, Birmingham, smaller cities in the UK, they already had crews that were breakdancing, and the music was electro and it was hip hop. So that when the rave thing kind of engulfed the whole nation, you know, from north to south, east to west, these were the beats that a lot of people were coming off of, and the Bones Breaks were current for that. It was current for rave, even though I didn't make the first two because of rave.
Yes,
Even the first three. Bones Breaks 3 was another excellent, like, you know, volume. But see, volume 3 was like my homage to Todd Terry, which, you know, because his tracks were really in the beginning were the biggest of that era. The Chicago guys did their thing. I mean, look, DJ International Records came out. Rocky Jones, what year? Probably 1985, 84 as a label. There was no such thing as an international DJ at that era. When he made that label, there was not DJs getting on airplanes to play gigs in other cities. That didn't come till years later. But of course, DJ International, a lot of international DJs happened within those 5 years, 1990 on. DJs were traveling on airplanes. But I know when we got on an airplane to come to London, nobody done that before.
Yeah.
So
when I think of Bones Breaks, them early ones, I don't hear that you're being influenced by Chicago Acid or Detroit. Other than tempo, like you're sampling hip hop, you're sampling all kinds of
the acid cuts on there are a lot of Chicago stuff, but not. I never went totally directly at it. Was a bunch of different things that didn't belong together. You know, like Planet Rock beats over like Fast Eddie Acid Break. I mean, and without having the Tyree Cooper Fast Eddie vocal in it, it's just another acid track when the acid thing comes in. So I was just combining a lot of different.
Like what Hank Shockley was doing with hip hop, with
and
he was doing with up tempo dance.
Me and Hank Shockley had a long conversation about this in 2008, and he was fascinated by all my. I didn't even know he knew why I was. I never looked at it like, hey, maybe these guys were buying my records back then, and I was telling him like, you know, like how Public Enemy to us. I mean, the inspiration Public Enemy gave me when they first came out in 1987, and realizing that anything I was doing, I was so inspired by hip hop, like Def Jam with LL Cool J, Beastie Boys, Public Enemy. How much of that went in and resonated within me? Like we were speeding up the hip hop breaks and making them dance musics like 125, 130 beats a minute. And the Bones Breaks definitely was just a mishmash of everything I could think of under the sun. Even with rock music, there was Led Zeppelin samples, you know.
Yeah, because if you think now, there was just no rules. There was no one other than going, well, okay, hip hop at 98 or 102 BPM does this, and Omar's been doing this, and Hank Shockley that. You had no blueprint.
Yeah, there was nothing. We were going on our own. We didn't know what we were doing. You know, I just knew that I wanted to turn last Saturday night into next Saturday night. Not really thinking about style, genres, where it's going. It's just whatever we played this week that was hot. So let's say The Power by Snap. You know, that was a huge record in 1990, which wasn't really a rave record, but it engulfed the whole everything. Same thing with Soul to Soul, you know, like there was a lot of really big bands coming out of the UK. Silver Bullet, you know, where Norman Cook came from before he was Fatboy Slim, like Norman Cook, we were taking inspiration from whatever was hot that week, trying to turn it into next week. Because, you know, in 1990, we started knowing who all the producers in the UK were. Yeah. And just watching the rise of rave come out of like, you know, where you had alternate like top of the pops, like within the first year, everything's top of the pops now. Shaman, whatever groups it was, are dominating the UK pop chart just because of Raves.
Yeah.
So
but back, you talking UK, my brain's been thinking, what was your first record that got signed to a UK label? Was it And the Beat Goes? Was it the Break
And the Break
Boys?
Goes On
West? Was it on the?
You know what? A lot of our records got signed. Like just as long as I got you on Looney Tunes, which
comes later. But
the first House Music All Night Long. Remember Two Guys on Acid?
Oh, yes.
Which was not even on any of our labels. We gave that record to Charlie Grappone from Vinyl Mania Records, wanted to start a sub-label, and we gave him Two Guys on Acid, which was House Music All Night Long. That was early. That might have been one of the first. I'm thinking of If there's anyone earlier than that, like the foreplay record you had mentioned that we did.
Yeah, I always love
That never got a license though.
Yeah.
We're on it, we got a license. ONIT, We're Out of Control. That was an early one.
Yeah.
I can't even think right now. There's so many like records, but licensing was great because it gave you that exposure in a different country.
Yeah. And that was your first intro, like those records being licensed to the UK in '88.
Yeah.
It was your first,
like
your first exposure to the UK. What tracks do you feel who were the first Brits to book you and bring you here?
Well, it was Tintin from Energy. Tintin brought us over to play Energy at August 26, 1989.
Which the footage is out there.
And then, I mean, when they booked us, there was only 5,000 people going to the parties. And this thing just exploded over the summer. I mean, for British youth, 1989 was the year where you've never had anything like that happen before. You know, we might have had the Beatles coming over from, thought Beatlemania back in America, but the rave scene was something totally different. It was like every kid that was alive at that point in time wanted to go to the raves on the weekend.
Yeah.
And it was unique because you had your M25 motorway, just built in 1986, 153-mile loop around London Orbital, just built. Now there's kids, you had the pirate radio in London, you had the record stores. So the flyers would be given out at the record stores. Saturday night would come around, you had pirate radio like Kiss FM, all the pirates before. On Saturday night would read the flyers off and tell you where the spot was, and you'd have hundreds of cars filled with kids on the M25 at the petrol services waiting to find out where the party was. And it would be somewhere off the M25, and it was on for the whole summer of '89. When I got there and passed it, I just remember what a unique concept. You have this road that's circular. It's 153 miles long. Wherever you get on, the rave might not be right there, but you sure as hell could get back on the motorway and figure it out. And then you'd have 10,000 people, 15,000 people in fields. It's amazing. I mean, I can't even tell you. Like all the people we met in the petrol services, it was just classic.
What was that like walking into Energy and playing that gig? How old was you?
I was 22 years old. I mean, the first time in the UK, and then to see all the cars, like you'd be going up these like country roads and there'd just be cars. It's like, wait a minute, 10,000 people. There's way more than 10,000 people here because the cars were parked for miles just on the side of the road. And it was like one big Woodstock. You know, prior to this rave scene happening, festivals, I don't know where people think festivals come from in our scene. Like when you go to Glastonbury, whatever the biggest ones, EDC in America, there was no festival scene between Woodstock and like the rave scene. Like people think, oh, it goes way back to the 50s. No, it started with the rave scene. When it started here, there was no festivals. I mean, Energy was built as the summer festival. I don't know why I was more engulfed in trying to do warehouse raves than festivals. Maybe festivals for America at the time were way too big to even like ponder in your mind, where I knew in New York I could start a warehouse rave scene, which I did. But yeah, I mean, the festival thing is a rave thing. It comes from the beginning of UK rave.
In dance music, yeah. So it's getting off the plane at the age of 22, 23. Did you have a sense that this was like, these were were you told you're coming here to play an illegal party?
Yeah, well, here's even better. This is even better. This story is the most amazing story I could ever tell you. And it's going to break down a lot of things because people know that with Plur, peace, love, unity, respect, that I was one of the guys that created Plur for the rave scene in America. Now, we get on this plane August 23rd, 1989, like 3 days. So I came over with Silvio Tancredi, Tommy Musto, Tommy's girlfriend at the time, and I had a girlfriend named Stacey Paris, who we signed to Construction Records. So there was like 5 of us on the plane. When we're on the plane, little Louis Vega is on the same flight as us. Like, Louis, what are you doing on this flight? And he was supposed to play the Energy. He got booked at the same time we did, but Tintin brought us out for the August 26th date, and they booked Louis Vega on the September 23rd date. Now, so it was Tim Taylor from JSE Agency who had the the plan, because it was an agency he worked for. They did rock acts like Jethro Tull and whatnot. Now they were going to try to book DJs to come over, which mine and Tommy was their first tour, the Fourth Floor All Stars. So they wanted to book Louis for the second show at Energy after we came home. And I wound up giving them, getting Louis, and I was friends with Louis back in the day, got his people in touch with Tintin to book that date. Now Louis on the flight with us going, oh, like, holy shit, what are you doing on the flight with us? Now, I just said DJs didn't go on airplanes at the time, but he had Patrick Moxie, who became a huge dude in all types of shit afterwards, was his manager. Louis was going over to get record deals and do remixes for Freestyle Orchestra was his band. He had signed to a UK label. They were just going to do remixes and production. Patrick Moxie comes up to me at the bathrooms in the back of the plane and is like, Bones, I can't let Louis do this party on September 23rd. I didn't know these rave parties were illegal. And, you don't want to be in another country and get arrested for doing something illegal. And I said, Patrick, listen, I wrote train graffiti for years on trains, which is totally illegal. I don't know if raves are totally illegal. I got booked for one. If I'm going to get arrested DJing, that's what I want to do. You know what I mean? He's like, you shouldn't do it, Bones. It's not a great thing. And I wound up having to take little Louis Vega's spot at the September 23rd one. And we got home from the tour on September 7th. So I get home. I'm totally blown away by this rave experience. Completely blown away by the rave experience. And they're like, you have to go back by yourself in 2 weeks for the 23rd party. And I'm not going by myself. Nobody's coming with me. No, you got to go alone, Bones. I was terrified. I just got thrown into this. It was like the blessing in disguise for me. So when I went back over, they put me on TWA, and it was on a big 747 first class with the bubble when you're on the top of the plane and the 16 seats, and ladies are giving me massages. It was like the ultimate first class flight ever. So I come over to play that rave. And that was it. I was in London every month after that. We lived here for a while. So thank you, Louis Vega, for giving me that experience, because if I didn't go back and take his slot, and that's the one you mentioned where I was young and everybody was dancing on speakers. Yeah. 17,500 people in an aircraft hangar outside of Ipswich. And that party didn't even start till like 9 a.m. Well, like 7 a.m, because the old Bill, the cops were blocking off all the roundabouts on the 812 getting there. They didn't want this thing to happen. And after 7 hours of cat and mouse, we all wound up in there and they let the party happen.
You even, you did a track as well, didn't you? Dedicated to Energy.
Take
control.
Flow Masses.
Which was XL Recordings.
Yeah, amazing, right? That we got,
And you was one of the early rave artists on XL before Liquid, before SL2.
Yeah, Prodigy got signed
Prodigy,
at that time, but we were amongst the first.
Yeah, because they had signed they've signed like LSD, not LSD as our British LSD.
Yeah, LSD.
As in Junior Vasquez. Yeah. They'd signed Took My Love Away and some bits from over there. They'd signed you. So you're a very early backbone.
It was a City Beat. So Tim Palmer had City Beat. City Beat Records falls into that whole thing you were mentioning about, Black Soul and Proper and Suits and, Soul Train. Yeah. City Beat Records. And they had Groove Records in Soho. That was a big record store.
That's right. Yeah.
I told Tim Palmer after the first trip, I'd like to open up a Groove Records in America, and I'll pay homage to you guys. I mean, it won't be affiliated. It'll just be like, I'm paying homage to you guys bringing me over. And I opened up Groove Records, which became Sonic Groove. And we were a pretty big, a record store during the rave culture in the 90s. But that being said, City Beat turned into XL. I mean, we might have been the third signing. I don't know what was before. It's the LSD, which was Junior Vasquez, which didn't have a well received. It
was an underground.
Yeah,
it was an underground.
It was because if they asked Junior to come over, he wouldn't have came over. Yeah, like DJ Danny Tenaglia, a lot of the main guys, Dave Morales, all the biggest guys in house music in the beginning didn't come fly over. They wanted their residencies in New York, and they weren't leaving their residencies. Like where I got thrown into this fire, and I didn't really have anything solid in New York. We were working, and then I'm doing all the big clubs because of Rave afterwards in New York. I'm getting all these gigs. But I got to witness the rave culture really explode here. And I played if you look at my passport, it was like August 23rd we came in, then to September, a couple days before the 23rd, and then I was back for Brixton Academy in October. And Energy always had something really big going on that I played for like months afterwards. There was the Dockland Arenas one. And I think, you know, with the Biology, Sunrise, Energy organizations, they were all separate. Biology seemed to have the biggest pull at the time, but then that one where they had Public Enemy on the flyer, and they had like some city had EPMD. There was 33,000 people conversion on that party in London, and they shut it down. It didn't happen. And the flyer was great. It was Biology. It was a body. It had the arms out and the circular shit, very colorful. Put Energy, because Sunrise really was the first big one, right? I mean, of the three, but Energy really put the whole shit on the map, where when they did Dockland Arena, they had Snap, they had like the biggest, you know, Technotronic, because there was a lot of pop shit that came out of it that was rave, like Pump Up
Before
the Jam.
they crossed over,
Like Pump Up the Jam would be like, not really from the rave scene here, but kind of like from the new beat scene in Belgium, but was a pop record, so it just encased everything. And then, you know, Energy got them to perform, and it was like Orbital, and it was like, you know, a lot of big groups came out of that early era.
Yeah, new beat needs to get mentioned more in the music becoming harder.
Yeah, like new cover versions of our records. You know,
new beat out. That whole new beat Belgium sound is also very.
Yeah, they did Sexuality, right? Which was Blake Baxter, who was the Prince of Techno in Detroit. But they made his record, Sexuality. They would do cover versions. They did Just As Long As I Got You by 101.
101.
101 charted. They made the pop charts when it was, you know, our record that they just copied and kind of sounded exactly the same because they knew the samples we used. So they sampled the same records, and that they did really well. But I mean, I was like traveling all over Europe at that point, and you know, but without the UK, none of this would have ever happened.
You say you were traveling to Europe. What in '89? What other countries did you go to?
We went to Copenhagen in Denmark, pretty much right off and then Amsterdam at the Roxy. We did Amsterdam. Where else? I mean, I went to Italy in like maybe early 1990. They were a lot of like. The Italians like just take the concept of the parties. Like one party I played was called Energetic. It was a copy of Energy. But yeah, I was like the first one outside. Like nobody even from the UK was flying to all these countries. Somehow I wound up in like all these countries. Paris, I did France, I did Paris. And they all had like from 1990 on, everybody had a scene. So
when you were first going to those places compared to London and the surrounding counties of the M25, did they have an ecstasy scene in the way that we did?
It spread pretty quickly. Right. I mean, so one of the first raves outside of the London area, I did street rave for Ricky up in Glasgow, and that was he had Shades of Rhythm doing live PA, and then you know Joey Beltram got big in the scene here. This is maybe a year afterwards, but Scotland had an amazing rave scene. They just all nutters up there, everybody going crazy.
Yeah.
But I think that was the first place after. But you know, when you say Scotland, it is the UK still, even though it's Scotland. But
did you go to places like Manchester and that?
Yeah, well, Amnesia House. You know, Amnesia
Big
House.
Up Nev. Nev's been on. We love
Coventry
Nev.
is great. I love Coventry, you know. According to legend, Coventry, there's a term, send them to Coventry, which is like something like of folk tales where you send people like jail people to Coventry and they get exiled there. And like, I don't know, you put kind of like Australia where, you know, Australia is just you're like a UK place where all the bad people, they send them to Australia. That's why they sound like English.
What's going through my mind?
Yeah.
Is and you know, us Brits who DJ on the rave scene, people as geeky as me, people who like love to go so deep in on history.
Yeah.
I think, and I don't know whether I speak for other DJs who have been immersed and full time in rave culture as you are. I always have great pride in saying, well, you know, from Chicago Acid, Detroit Techno, New York breakbeat, and really New York has a lot of real soulful gospel house as well.
Yeah,
you know, when you think
absolutely.
of
I mean,
Arnold Jarvis and stuff like that. It's like a badge of honor that you guys gave us this music, right?
Right.
You gave us this inspiration, and it comes here, and then all of a sudden it meets ecstasy, and then it explodes around the world and goes back.
Wow.
You are that guy. You are that guy.
It's funny.
You are that guy.
It is true. I never really,
who made these records
Yeah.
in early '88 with no concept of ecstasy,
Right.
no concept of Britain. Britain then invites you.
Yeah.
Right. You then play at these huge ecstasy parties with your music that was not made for ecstasy.
Right.
Right. And then all of a sudden you go back and start ramping up the music. Also, you know, everyone from Reinforced to sub bass to
Moving Shadow,
to Shut,
I know,
all of the, you know, all of those early labels. Homeboy Hippie and a Funky Dread, Mark's in the studio downstairs. I'll take you to meet him.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? Because
now they will undoubtedly be influenced and inspired by you, but you come here. And then all of a sudden you go back, the music, you add the amens, you start ramping it up. You know?
Yeah.
Like,
we were very big in bringing this British culture to New York in the beginning, but like, it's funny. You mentioned Homeboy Hippie and Funky Dread. I mean, Total Confusion, definitely in my top 10 of all time, but you know, I'm buying records here this week. I get an Eon record, Fear the Mind Killer, which is by Before Spice, and I flipped the jacket over and it says special thanks, and I see Frankie Bones in there, and I'm like, why did it take me 30-something years to see this? And I'm now seeing it, and I'm like, wow. I mean, Eon, J Soul Carrying was like, for free, he was like the UK guy that made freestyle, but it was more like just really good music for the head, like, and just meeting all these guys along the way. I mean, there was so many. It was so impactful because, again, he said, like, I didn't know what ecstasy was. Now, I wasn't some, like, prima donna kid from the streets of New York. I mean, I knew what drugs were. Kids used to take in the 80s, mescaline. They were little purple barrels. And then there was Red Stars. They were like mescaline or offshoot of mescaline. It wasn't like ecstasy. It was more like acid, LSD. We had LSD. Those drugs were too powerful for the music. When you take them, you'd flip out and do all this crazy. Though we did them, but ecstasy was just calming. Like, we take your ecstasy, it was like, whoosh, and all of a sudden, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you understood the music, you understood the rave. It was like built to do that. And when we used to do residencies at like Rage in Heaven, Under the Arches, that club, Rage, I mean, with Fabio and Groove Rider, such pioneering moments when, you know, Fab and Groove Rider are playing techno, they're playing R&S records, and they're playing real hard techno before the drum and bass came out. I mean, it was amazing because rave music wasn't just breaks, it was house, it was techno. It was the three kind of coming in at once, but the breakbeats were the most exciting part of it. And you say Total Confusion, Homeboy Hippie and Funky Dread, and I get to bring Casper Pound to play Storm Rave in New York in 1992. We had Sven Voth, we had Richie Horton. First time ever in America that you bring in big DJs in at once. And I had like four of like the biggest guys from around the world coming and playing our parties. And like, man, I love that Total Confusion record from the start.
It's incredible. It's fascinating to know that you literally inspired the breakbeat movement in rave, yet England is, you could almost be British. Like, here I am fascinated by New York, and tell me more about New York. And you come to London and you literally take the energy back.
There is a clip of fucking John Peel, it's on YouTube, where he plays Bones Breaks 4. Strings of Death was the track, because I did like my little rendition of Strings of Life, and it was called Strings of Death. And, you know, John Peel playing it on a John Peel session, Bones Breaks 4, and the way he announced it, like as if it was like real meaning. And I'm listening, and I heard that, and I was like, John Peel? Nobody ever told me that. This is years later. I'm seeing, I'm like, wow, John Peel played a Bones Breaks on a John Peel session? No fucking way.
Yeah.
If I didn't see it with my own eyes on YouTube, I would not believe it. But like, cause I was just, I just got involved in the scene. I'm DJing. I'm proud and happy to be here and be a part of it all. And man, it was like you said, I could have been from England the whole time, like the way it went.
You really could have. And I think as well, like earlier you mentioned Hackney and Brixton, and the beautiful thing now about the internet is all of a sudden clips are emerging of moments in time that not even you knew existed.
And it's bringing it all to light now.
And you're seeing stuff. And Kino Library, who has the excellent footage of Energy the first time you was here, they've also, and you've got to go through this stuff with a fine tooth comb. They don't
tell you exactly where it is or what happened.
Right? And there's this piece where you go to Berwick Manor, where this is like 1990, where Roger Johnson is. Then you mentioned Hackney earlier. You go to a club,
and then the barn in Colchester. Barn is another one,
and they're capturing you, but they're capturing you 6 to 8 months after that 89 explosion, right? Where all of a sudden they stop the raves. They stopped the big raves, and it's literally going back into the underground clubs, and it's literally in the sweat boxes, in the 200-300 people.
Those are the ones I like the most.
Yeah, right. And that's where, like, yes, you have all this, you experience the M25, but then when I see the videos of Berwick Manor, and when I see like the videos of, like you say, the barn, walking into like what would have been old reggae clubs in Stoke,
now they're doing like rave inspired type parties inside.
That's where I then hear the next step of Frankie Bones and like the music getting that slightly harder. You add in the amen, like you've seen my videos where I've broke down the amen.
You definitely did.
Do you think I've been accurate with how I see you?
Let me just say this: if anybody out there needs to know your history as Billy Bunter, and this is a record you made recently, like within the last 5, maybe 6 years, the "Don't You Want Some More." You made a record with the "Don't You Want Some More" sample in it,
right?
House track. I don't know what you call the artist on that. Do you know what the artist name is? Don't you want some more? Don't you want some more? You did like a newer version.
Did I give it to you?
I don't know if you get it's in the last, like recently. It's not like way back. Right. You took the First Choice sample, and it's like, here's a record that's been, we've all done the First Choice sample, but you did this one recently that was really done well. Like really
was it in a housey style?
Yeah, it's like a housey kind of.
Like a kind of an ode to Big Shot.
You didn't call it like Pizza Man, but it had a weird name. You had a weird name to it. You came up with something. It wasn't a Billy Bunter record, but
I think I know what you mean.
But you had this "Don't You Want Some More" sample, and I wound up doing my own version of it, like a remix.
Right.
That to take a sample that's been that many times and yet make it again where it was worthy of play again. Yeah, it was a fucking great track. And I mean, you've been around for a long time. Like you gave me your book when I saw you last 8 years ago. And then Mark gave me his alternate book. Like, everybody's making books. I'm like, where's my book? Yeah, I'm working on it. It's coming. It's got to be done. This has been worked on. I've been working on it for a long time. There's a lot of material in it. A lot of things people don't know. You say the videos are going, people are starting, but I got to connect the whole thing where it all connects. Yeah. Because, like, in America, I get, known as the guy that invented plur for the racing. Peace, love, unity, respect. So, going back to that flight I was on in 1989, the first flight over, where little Louis Vega was on the plane with me, on the same night during this flight, a young African-American youth in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, who was coming to buy a car for somebody, a used car. Yusef Hawkins is his name. You could look him up on Google. You could look him up Wikipedia. Yusef Hawkins got murdered for being a black kid that came into the neighborhood to buy a car from a Italian mob of white kids that killed him for coming into the neighborhood. Now, in the 80s, these things were happening quite often. You had Willie Turks, was a transit worker, went to get a bagel. Italian mafia gang beat him up outside the bagel store, killed him. You had Michael Griffin, another racial attack. So throughout the 80s, it was so sad that, in a city that's just cosmopolitan and cultural as New York, that these white, black instances were happening. So Yusef Hawkins got murdered on the plane as I'm going over to London to discover the rave scene. I'm here for 2 weeks. I come home. I see all this peace and love amongst everybody in the rave scene. And I'm going to open up a record store in Bensonhurst, which, you know, when you see John Gotti in the Italian mafia movies, they're from Bensonhurst. That's where all the Italians lived. And I'm going to go open a rave record store in the neighborhood, which I did. So as we opened this record shop to sell our music in Bensonhurst, we started something called Peace, Love, Unity Movement. And Mr. C was supposed to rap on the track that we put out. And it's an Atmosphere record. It exists. It says copyright 1990. Mr. C did a rap on it. But then Will from Shaman died in a video shoot at Ibiza like a week before. And then Mr. C became the front guy for the Shaman. And congrats to that, because I mean, Ebenezer Good, all the Shaman records that Mr. C was involved with, mega hits, and God bless for that. But this kid Yusef Hawkins, I felt we needed to promote our scene as a peace, love, and a unity movement before it was Plur. Because we didn't want people coming to the parties. We wanted the music to pull everybody together in New York. And music is the only thing that could do that. So we started off promoting our parties, Peace, Love, Unity Movement. It became Plur later on. But when people ask me, like, how do you come up with the concept? I mean, you know, even when my father got murdered driving a cab, it was kind of you know, my dad was in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time. And music brings everybody together. It always has. It always will be. And that's the only thing that could save the world. I think music's the only thing that could save the planet right now, the way everything's so messed up here. With all
music's spiritual. Music, you know, I'm not religious. I'm not a religious person, but the spirituality of music.
I know. I'm the same way.
Yeah,
same way.
It is what gives me that heartbeat, is what guides me through life. And I'm talking to spirituality.
Yeah.
I think your vibe from England and your use of the Amen breakbeat after Mantronics had used it, after it had filtered through ultimately from the Ultimate Breaks and Beats albums. Because on that video that I did explaining the Amen, I broke down once the Ultimate Breakbeats had come in, and you can hear it in Mantronic's King of the Beats that he'd sampled from that. Mantronic come underneath the same post that you did, saying, yes, you've got this absolutely right. This is where my inspiration. And then I kind of went into Success and Effect, and then I went into your Bones Breaks that sampled it, and I said, here is the start of British breakbeat, proto jungle hardcore.
Right.
Frankie's been in London, been in Brixton, been in Stoke Newington and Hackney, played. And he goes back and makes this, and it would be too flimsy to say as the rest is history, because it's not, because that's the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, like, bringing the Success and Effect record wasn't supposed. Success and Effect was an Atlanta rap group.
Yes,
that
exactly.
Put out, like, and Felix Sama, who did the edit on the Bass Kicking Beats, which is the B-side 3 cut on a little tiny cut on the back. Felix did this chopped up edit thing, which was like, you know, he's got the Big Daddy Kane thing, let it roll, chopped up. And then when that 808 kicks in with that almond break, which is sampled from King of the Beats, it's not sampled, like, these are like 5th generation samples by the time you get to Bones Breaks 5. It was sampled from the original onto some hip hop record where Mantronics sampled it, which Success and Effect sampled the Mantronics, which I sampled the Success and Effect. Now you got a 5th generation almond break, and they're getting dirtier and dirtier as they go along. Because like the Success and Effect record, that shit is dirty as dirty could get. It set speakers on fire.
It's so dirty with your version.
Yeah, I know, because I sampled it from that, and that's
the charm.
And it's not even done yet. At that point, Carl Cox was playing the Janet's Revenge off of Bones Breaks 5 because nobody could get the Success and Effect record. They didn't know what it was. Back then, there's no internet to find the record. I never told anybody what the title was. And me and Lenny gifted Carl the record in late 89 when we came in December 89. Me and Lenny had a second copy that we would use. I had mine. Lenny had his. It was one extra. We gave it to Carl Cox. We go to Carl's house. I told Carl, listen, boy, he just built his studio, Carl, right? He had this beautiful studio. Neil from Enjoy was helping him out. Lenny was helping him out. Like, Lenny and Carl got really tight, really quick. And I told Carl, you don't have to know how to work all the equipment. All you need to do right now is go and record you playing something over that Success and Effect record, DJ style, which he used I Like It by Landlord, which was the perfect break to put over it. And then stamp a white label, Success and Effect called Cox on a record, which he did. It was a white label, not an official release, but it was Carl's first record. And everybody thought that Carl, having this record, it was his record. 2 months later, he does I Want You Forever on Perfecto. And now he's a pop star because the Perfecto record catapulted him into the, the scene where everybody was like, yeah. And, Carl, #1 DJ ever. I tell him the camera. People are always like, yeah, Carl's all right. No, Carl Cox is whatever a DJ out of the rave scene was supposed to become from 1989 till now. Is Carl Cox. There's no one better than him. He's played consistently for his whole fucking career. Because when people are like, oh yeah, he's all right, but he doesn't really play real time. Like people talking shit. I'm like, dude, that is your guy right there. But when I told him to do the Success and the record Effect bootleg, yeah, that's the track. And that was the 7th, sample, coming down the long list of Amen break samples. So yeah, we did something with that.
Did you after your first Amen one there?
Yeah. Well, we did the Silly Games by Arthur Baker. Remember that?
I love that record. How many times have I covered that? The amount of times I've done Silly Games and collabed with him in it. I love Silly Games. I think you would say in New York, that's my joint. That is my joint.
That City Limits copy is a bootleg. We didn't put that record out. It's not our record.
Have you got that? Because I can't get that. Even remastering it, I can't get it sounding. So they bootleg.
That's a bootleg. It never came out on City Limits. Somebody here in the UK years later. So let's officially clear that up. City Limits never released that record. City Limits was one of our labels through Apexton, but we never put that record out.
I've got to go back quickly.
That's fine. No, it's good.
Because I then want to come back to England, 1990, right? You worked sorry everyone for distressing the bit in 1990, but when you worked at Apexton, younger, packing the records, what always fascinated me as a young music buyer and still does to this day, jacket made in Canada. Yeah. Obviously the records are being printed in New York.
The jackets were made in Canada.
Didn't know one in New York. Couldn't they print sleeves?
It was weird that the people that made the cardboard sleeves were in Canada and everybody did their sleeves in Canada.
That fascinates me. Right, so record buyers, right, and record enthusiasts, all of your New York American records that he's talking about and we're talking about, whether it's
with the generic hole but might have the label name on it, they were all made in Canada.
You go and look at your black sleeves with any of his records and it will say jacket made in Canada.
Yep.
But the record pressing plant which he worked at was in New York. And that always blew my mind, knowing that hang on a minute, this record's from America. Why are the jackets coming from Canada? That was just the
company that made them was in Canada. I don't know why. Canada's not that far from America, so it's like,
of course.
But I don't know why other companies weren't making the jackets because you guys in UK have these jackets they call them disco bags.
Disco bags.
And a disco bag is the thin sleeves that most 12 inches came in at the time that have no paper sleeve. They're not shrink wrapped. And just the way you guys were so fascinated on how we shrink wrap the records, we were just as fascinated on how the UK didn't shrink wrap the records, and it made them, But it always seemed to be what was, on the other side of the pond that became interesting.
One other thing back to pressing, some of those New York pressings were so thin and flimsy, Frank. Come on,
Do you remember, by the time we were doing records like Revelation, First Power, that came out on Atmosphere.
Atmosphere is such a label.
You could take the record and flip it like this, and it would flip back and forth like a frisbee, just bending back. It would never break. It was so thin. We had to go in and complain about that because they were the thinnest records. They're almost like an Evertone sheet that you'd find in a magazine. You'd peel the sheet up.
Literally, I picked up my Atmosphere. Actually, I was listening
we had to complain about that.
I was listening to Joey's Riot and Mental Mayhem. Just a few days ago. Mate, it's so thin. And when I did the other week, I did Mickey Finn and Tim Taylor.
He's breaking up.
Which come through New York and then back to England. It is so thin. The American pressing.
It was
I love New York, but if I only ever have one complaint, and it's not a complaint, It's how thin your fucking pressing.
At that point, we had a complaint about that. It changed over time, but it went from, I mean, it was like just flimsy for a while. And some of the best records that we made came out on these flimsy copies. So we changed that over time, but some of the best records that we made came out on those flimsy records.
They really did. And now when you think of things like, I'm talking about Mental Mayhem and she's breaking up, those records go for like 60, 70, 80 pounds now. And you pick these flimsy things out that are like so, like literally flimsy.
Flimsy, like literally, like if you flap it like this bottle, it would just flap in the wind. It was, I know, we corrected it. But it was.
I always like seeing mastered by Herb Powers.
Yeah. Well, Herb Powers is a master. He started in like 81, and if his stamp wasn't on the record, you wouldn't have the volume.
Yeah.
His records. He was legendary in mastering. But back to this City Limits thing with Arthur Baker. Yeah, we never
knew that.
Yeah, Arthur Baker hired me to do the remix just for the UK version that came out on A&M Records, and that's the way it has to be on A&M Records for it to have the original quality. Because that City Limits was definitely a bootleg, and it was bootleg a lot later on from 1990, maybe in the 2000s they put it out. But,
because the original bootleg is 1990. But I love Silly Games. Like, come on, Robert Owens.
On a track with an amen break.
With an amen break. That soul-stirring voice, and you with the amen, wow.
Yeah, and I actually did that mix on my own. It wasn't like me and Tommy mixed most of this stuff together. And I'm gonna, I'll tell you now that Tommy, as a team, Tommy Musto and Frankie Bones, those records was like just my input and Tommy's expertise in the studio to make them sound that way. Otherwise, I just knew how to get the record to where it's supposed to be. And a lot of the Bones breaks were just that. They weren't engineered very well. They were just like very much like playing around with beats and, putting out whatever would happen. That's why there was 8 tracks on each one.
Was Tommy older than you?
Tommy is older than me, by a couple of years. I'm not really sure how many, but it's a couple.
Yeah.
I'm just coming up on 60 now, so in October I'll be 60.
Musto and Bones, legendary. 1990. So, like, when I think of Shut Up and Dance, when I think of Reinforced, when I think of so much
Shadow,
of the music coming out, you can hear the way in which you were sampling and putting.
Well, just think of how many times you've heard "Let the Bass Kick" on any record. Like this is why I always say the Success and Effect record is so important to this culture. People don't realize we took a Miami bass record that was an Atlanta hip hop group that shouldn't have ever even seen the light of day in the UK, and played this one bonus beat track, which became the prototype for all drum and bass that came after it.
Yeah.
Just got to listen to Success and Effect one time. And if you don't hear what I'm talking about, because drum and bass was based on how many slices you could get in one bar of music. And look how far drum and bass has come, I mean, it went dark in 92, 93. I was following all of this. And then drum and bass became a genre, and it's all right that British people created from the get-go. I mean, produced the most ultimate character to ever live is Goldie. Okay, when anybody says Goldie is the ultimate character that electronic music ever produced. And when Goldie sees me, he's like, Bones. Well, he tells me 10 years ago, Goldie comes to New York, plays this club called Downtime. He sees me, comes up, he goes, I just turned 50 pounds. It's the golden era, mate. I'm like, of course it's the golden era. You're fucking Goldie. What else is it going to be? And we were laughing, and now I feel like my golden era at 60 is coming, because I didn't really, the last few years have been from the last time I saw you 8 years ago, a lot, we had the COVID thing happen. I never thought I was going to come back here, and now I'm back. So maybe it is 60 years,
Goldie's very big on heritage like we are.
Yeah, he loves it.
He is incredibly big on knowing his position. Like he says, we're standing on the shoulders of giants with this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that the heritage to him is incredibly important. Like it's incredibly important to me and you. And I think like in the positions that we're in, especially in the internet day where we can reach so many people. It's so important to put this out there,
to let them know. I mean, it's like,
educate.
I haven't got my full right due of what I've done. And I mean, I'm happy with what people know about me, but there's DJs that, haven't done really much, and they get lots more credit. And I think that this whole coming from Brooklyn, coming to the UK, and then what happened from the UK back to America. I mean, I was fortunate enough to get to Los Angeles when their rave scene was first beginning. Now, you got to realize in America, a lot of British people go to Hollywood or go to California on holiday. And as the rave scene's emerging in Los Angeles, a lot of British folks were like, hey, we're going to throw raves here. And I got a very front taste of that, which made me be able to bring it back to New York. Because for those first 6 months, New York wasn't going to have a rave culture. It was just different society. And Los Angeles taught me how to do it in an American way, and I brought it back. There's that whole chapter of that we didn't even touch on
This
yet.
is so important to get into.
I mean, like, there was like English people going into California. They weren't really promoters or DJs. They were just people that had money, that maybe they were interested in Hollywood, maybe they were rich, whatever, but they started throwing raves in Los Angeles. And then taught me how to cut the locks off a gate and put your own lock on the gate. And if on Thursday you come there and your gate still locks on the gate, you could throw a party there. And that's what I molded the New York scene after. I'd find a warehouse, clip the lock off on a Monday, put the lock on. If the lock's there on Saturday, it's on. And that's how I did it. And it was because I was a witness to London, and then I witnessed to LA. But being the time I was in the UK scene for a year, being at like 10, 12 times, I was ready to go in New York. And it's important because America might not have had the same rave culture that we've had.
This part of the story is incredibly important to me because obviously we know now how big EDM as such is in America and these huge festivals. But ultimately what we're talking about here is actually not house, your influence in breakbeat, acid, Detroit, techno, garage as in gospel, garage, vocal, church music over dance beats. What we need to get into is the birth of rave, the birth of rave culture in America. And that rave culture, that plur that you talk about, you brought it back to New York. You met people in LA, and you literally mirrored what you'd felt and experienced with the help. And I think that's so important to say. It's literally you witnessed the birth of rave in England, and then you brought it back. Like, explain the difference between New York, LA, and London. Were they the same? Were they not? Because I recently watched, which I mentioned to you, and you said you haven't seen it yet.
Right.
About 2 or 3 weeks, because I'm such a geek. I spend my life looking for footage and stuff. And there's an opening of a record shop in like mid '92, I believe it's in LA.
Okay.
And you're there. I think it's Adam X as well, and you're at this opening of this store, and it's all British rave breakbeat music. So that's in '92, and it was so British that the sound and everything.
Right.
Explain 90 to like 92, 93, your record shop, you're breaking into.
Well, let me start. Let me start with the Los Angeles.
A lot
scene
to unpack for me.
There is definitely, because like in America, the rave scene came through California, whether it be the southern SoCal, like Los Angeles, and then in San Francisco, they also had a early rave scene. But we're gonna focus on Los Angeles, because what happened with San Francisco, and I know they had an early rave scene, but like on my birthday, which is in October of 1989, San Francisco had a real major earthquake that really leveled the city. So chances of a rave scene breaking in San Francisco right as a major earthquake took down the highways, like they had a lot of infrastructure that was messed up. Like, you could research it. So I go back to LA. What happened was a lot of Hollywood type kids, the kids that were rich, they were already throwing underground parties way before rave got there. And like downtown Los Angeles is set up like these warehouses where, they were great for raves, but nobody knew what raves were yet. Hollywood kids would throw parties. They'd bring their father's John Coltrane records down to play. Nobody was mixing. This is how my brother Adam X became a DJ. He came with me to London, came with me to LA, and saw in LA, the DJs are just playing one record after the other, not even mixing. So, you know, that was the first thing we noticed about LA. And the first party I did, which is at the Mayan Club on June 1st, 1990. Now, you look at August 26, 1989, you got September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June. 10 months later, I used all 10 fingers for that. I get to Los Angeles. The minute I never was in California before. It was the first big place I went to after London, got off the plane, and the minute I got off the plane and the warm weather hit me and I saw the palm trees and I see all these places I see in movies, I was like, I love Los Angeles from the minute I got off the plane. They had record stores that were already there doing, you know, disco music and dance music for people. They had all our records out there too. And I was like, wow. And I got really big in California because the rave scene came into California through ID Magazine, Face Magazine, right? Record Mirror. There was these newsstands in Hollywood that had every magazine from everywhere around the world. We didn't have this in New York. So you had ID, you had the Face, and then, you know, Record Mirror. And those were magazines that first showed people what the rave scene was. So I guess, like, you know, if you remember ID Magazine, it was always, from the minute rave happened, it was in all those magazines every month. So I guess some people figured it out in Los Angeles, and some British tourists went there and started throwing raves. Started about early 1990. In America, I tell people the rave scene can only go back to January 1st, 1990. And I don't think it goes back that far because the only thing we had for the rest of 89 till New Year's of 1990 was word of mouth things happening. And nobody really had any internet or any cell phones or any to spread the gospel, you know? So 1990, by the summertime, you know, Los Angeles gets a taste of it. I wound up doing Stranger Than Fiction, which was the first massive that ever happened in America. Only 3,000 people showed up. They were looking to do like a really big rave. It wasn't quite there yet. But the things I learned in Los Angeles, I was able to apply what I learned in London to New York, and I was able to start a rave scene in New York. Now, we had a fire in New York. Happy Land was a social club. March 25th, 1990, that burned down and 87 people died. Now, if we do history, the most people to ever die in one place prior to this Happy Land fire going back to like 1924, maybe even earlier, the Triangle Fire, a bunch of people that was sewing, doing, you know, making garments died in a fire. The only thing after 1990 that was on that level of this Happy Land fire was 9/11. Which was still 11 years away. So they started a social task club. Now, this is right like March 25th, 1990. I've only been in the scene 6 months. I'm going to try to start throwing these raves. My record store opens in April of 1990. We open the record store to spread the gospel. We'll sell records. We'll sell mixtapes. We'll put the party, you know, address on flyers. If we do parties, you come give us the money at the store. We send you off to the party. That's how we did it. But, that social club task force that they started, now you can't do illegal parties of any type. They didn't even know what rave was yet. They're just doing social club task force to events that have people at it that are not licensed venues to do this. So we thought that we were going to start a rave scene maybe through the clubs. That is never what happens with raves. The minute you put a rave in a club environment, it's not a rave anymore. So on July 30th, we did this atmosphere party for our record label. We tried to inject the rave into the club thing. Didn't quite work out. So that's like, what's that? May. It was May, like the end of May 1990. I go to Los Angeles. First time I'm there, they take me to this egg factory. I'm going to DJ in some old egg factory that's abandoned. And I learned about cutting the locks off the gates. So that was like my intro to the whole thing, because now I know if I find a space I want to throw a party, I put my own lock on the gate, I could throw my own parties. And it came up through that. And it came up quick because I had other people now doing it in clubs like the Limelight. Totally my concept. I think Lord Michael that ran Limelight went with Lenny. So I came to London. I did 1, 2, 3, 4 tours. Lenny came with me on my 5th tour. That's not to take anything away from Lenny, because like Lenny came in hard and strong on his first tour. Went right with Carl Cox and started helping Carl making music, and they
did amazing things. And then maybe on Lenny's fourth trip, Lord Michael from the Limelight, who was just a promoter from Staten Island, came with Lenny. So that would have been 9 trips in for me. Comes back, now knows about ecstasy, finds the same people I knew, because the people behind Focus UK was behind some of the things coming into New York. That I was never a drug dealer, but we got a lot of ecstasy really quick in New York. And Lord Michael, who tail ended off of Lenny, got wind of that and started the Limelight Nights. Now you have a club in New York that's a church, a huge club filled with ecstasy. The thing blew up right away because you put ecstasy and good music in a good space. That's all you need to make this rave thing just boom, you know? So now I'm like in competition with Lord Michael, who I was close friends with. The guy had me set up. I got set up in front of my house. I got pistol whipped twice. I got hit with baseball bats twice. This is like a scene out of Saturday Night Fever when Gussie's coming up with the, you know, brown bags of groceries and they beat the fuck out of him. This is happening to me in real life because I got a green lighted from the Limelight, because anytime we did Storm Rave, Limelight would be crickets. It'd be like 3,000 crickets because they'd all be at my parties. So a friend of mine wanted to get rid of me and almost did. But, you know, we had a lot of ecstasy coming through New York at the time. Like I said, before the race, I didn't know nothing about ecstasy. And now all of a sudden it's everywhere. That's why New York scene was amazing, because you had 2 years where it was all about that. Nobody was doing ketamine. No one was doing, everybody was just doing ecstasy and listening to techno music. I mean, what more could you ask for? So, you know, I got whacked out. I got out of the hospital. I found out I was set up. And then little by little, Limelight, you know, faded from view. But after Storm Rave, some of the crews that came up, Caffeine Club, NASA, these are all friends of mine. I was able to work all the way through the 90s because everybody that did parties after Storm Rave were friends with me. So we had a nice network.
I think you've got parallels once again with London. Setting up your rave, being in competition, getting, as you say, pistol whipped, getting caught up in promoter politics. It's pretty fascinating. And the other thing, just like which many people have spoke about, promoters from 89 and stuff on this podcast, the fact that you're promoting peace, love, unity, rave, and you're getting kidnapped and hostage.
This is why a lot of people have a hard time believing that, you know, because we were from Brooklyn. Brooklyn is like the hardcore borough. It's like any mafia movie you see, you know, Casino or Goodfellas, that was real life in Brooklyn. And here we are. Yeah, we're going to open up a rave record store right in the middle of all this, which we did. But, you know, we were Brooklyn kids ourselves. So we were graffiti writers. We hung out in the hip hop scene. So we were just kind of, you know, just doing our thing. And, you know, the jealousy amongst people I knew, there was enough to go around for everybody. But someone like Lord Michael got, no, I want to be Kingpin. There was no reason for it. I wasn't a threat to anybody. I'm a DJ, you know? And then to live through that shit and look back at it is like, man, maybe my father really reached a place where he saved my life, because I should have been dead from getting pistol whipped and baseball bat out in front of my house. It was bad. I mean, and I learned, and I just kind of stayed and tread water not to piss people off, but you're always pissing somebody off.
Yeah, you can't help it. Like I always say, because I'm a DJ and a promoter.
Yeah.
If I was just a DJ and wasn't in the world of promoting and done promoting for 30 years, my life would have been so much easier.
Yeah.
Because in the game, as DJs, me and you go, we get paid good money for doing what we love. And the only bitchiness is maybe another DJ going, oh, I can mix better than him. Or why is his name above mine? Or, you know, or there's always a DJ's girlfriend who's being even bitchier than the DJ, right? Whereas the moment you go into promoting, especially in a big place like London or a big place like New York or
Los Angeles,
it is a completely different thing, because 3,000 people at $20 or $20 is completely different to some bitchy young DJs headbutting over who's the best. You said you had 2 good years of doing illegal.
I think parties. Everywhere you get 2 years before the hoodlums and the gangsters and the roadmen and everybody come in wanting a piece of that money. You know what I mean? And then the ecstasy got really bad. The pills weren't as pure as they were in the beginning. It was pure MDMA, and it was amazing. I mean, nobody would fight. The parties would go to 9 a.m.
Yeah,
you know. We brought like one Storm Rave, it had Richie Horton, it had Casper Pound, it had Sven Roth, it had Doc Martin from LA. I had all the big DJs from different regions in 1992, and 5,000 people show up in it was inside a storage unit, like where you have storage unit places. It was just a shell of the building. It wasn't built yet, but we could put a sound system in there and then have 10,000 square feet of just room.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was just totally amazing. And we did it, we did it. We did what we said we were going to do.
In that 2 years, name, 2 years in the rave scene, especially 90, 91, 92, music changed so rapidly for all of us. Like 1 minute we're playing 118 to 122 BPM.
Yeah.
And then it's speeding up. Then we've, you said Richie Alton, the Canadians were brilliant at techno. There's all this different styles and speeds. The video that I saw of you in the other day in the record shop, you're playing music from England, like Rhythm Section and Asen and all that. In that 2 years of the New York warehouse illegal rave scene, reel me off records that you can remember playing across that 2 years.
So, I had I actually applied to go to college. It was community college because I wanted to get into radio broadcasting. So in 1990, this is after coming here a few times, I wound up getting a show on the radio station there, B91. It's a college radio station. The signal only goes through a couple neighborhoods of Brooklyn, but it was the key neighborhoods where we were from. So I get this show called Techno Thursdays on B91, and I treated it like a real show, counted down the biggest records that we got from the record distributor that week. And like you're saying, the big records, all right, so in your history or in our history of rave records, dominated by Human Resource, probably the biggest record of all time. If there was another one to compare with that, it would be Anastasia by T99.
Amazing.
Those were the two records. And then looking at what those records were, dominated was Human Resource, being from Holland, their take on Beltram with the Mentasm sound, the Hoover sound that, pretty much dominated every breakbeat record after it, right? And right into drum and bass. That sub bass and the Mentasm Hoover sound was a sound of rave. That was the rave sound, that whooshing fucking Mentasm sound. And I think other records we played, labels, PJ and Smiley definitely had a big impact from the 10 pounds to get in, because that was a rave record, right? 10 pounds to get in a rave. We had later on Shut Up and Dance, Shine Eye by Raga Twins, which is a Raga record, but was huge in the rave scene in New York and in America. Records I go on to days, anything on Tam Tam. Homeboy Hit Be a Funky Dread, it would be Total Confusion. It would be Start the Power. And then Lenny came back and started Industrial Strength Records, where he started an American label, which would become a very well-known hardcore label, but started off with The Mover from Germany, PCP Records. That was the German scene, the hard stuff, Masculinity United. And then, also licensed the stuff from Casper Pound and Casper too. And just Casper was a great guy. Rest in peace, Casper. We lost you too young. But Casper, Rising High, that whole sound, amazing times in music, because a label like Rising High had hard floor. They had a lot of influence in different styles of the music. So just the way it happened here and the way it branched out, and how, labels like Suburban Bass would get a deal with Atlantic in New York. That was happening a lot. A lot happened quick in those first few years.
Yeah, it was a really, really creative time. I still, even though I lived it, I still marvel over that 88 to 94. I lived 88, 89 in the record shop.
Yeah,
90 to
that was the time to live in it.
Yeah,
so
I lived DJing every Friday and Saturday in Dalston, and I still marvel over the sheer amount of music that we experience, the sheer amount of tempos that we watch happen, all of the breaks and the cut-off points in which it moved into different.
We were big on the breakbeat thing because we came over, and like I said, whatever I inspired with Bones Breaks, a lot of guys were coming out, and I remember the early what records were there? There was ones that were Bone, Sonic. What the hell?
Sonic Experience.
Well, that was on RNS, but then there was a couple of Oh my God, they were told.
I'm
drawing blanks right now.
Underground.
No, like they were like 3 tracks on the side. Break the Limits, Break the Limits.
Break the Limits, of course. Break the
Right,
Limits.
Break the Limits had a couple.
Incredible, yeah.
So anything that did
come on.
volumes, like Break the Limits had 1, 2, and 3, and they were all amazing. Anything that had the kind of like, there was these specific UK records that had the same typeset on all of them that you could tell they were homegrown. Like, I mean, this is later on, but I don't know if you remember a record called Together We Can Learn by AWA, our trance record, like a serious, like go with trance record that came out of the UK that was huge in America because it followed that German sound. And there was producers like, damn it, record that came out on KMS on Kevin Saunderson. He started licensing all like stuff from here for a little period of time. Terrorize. It's just a
amazing.
feeling.
I played it at the weekend though. I still play that,
it's just a feeling. The Terrorize, right? Those guys that made that Terrorize record made that AWA record years later. They had a lot of underground shit nobody even knew. But Terrorize was one of the big one. And KMS Records, Kevin licensed stuff from like, I'm thinking what else? Blame he put out. He put out stuff from Moving Shadow. Was very well into the breakbeat thing for a while.
What was your record shop like in that period?
So,
do you feel you captured what you was experiencing, Groove and Black Market?
What happened was like the distributor, Watts was the name of our distributor. Watts was the premier U.S. distributor. So every country in Europe that had a label wanted their stuff in the American marketplace. So we would get flooded with records. We would have your guys' records, Bush records that would come out. We had the records 2 weeks prior to them coming out in the UK. Like the early Dave Clark Red One, we had copies of that way before anybody else had them. And a lot of labels wanted their stuff put in America, so they would send excess amount of copies, like more than they should have. We had everything. Yeah, I think musically, speaking about the music itself, we had the ultimate, like, we could just go to the distributor and take whatever we wanted. They let us come in there, like, we pick our own orders because we were with them from the beginning. So it was amazing. Yeah, we got more records than anybody. Did everything.
Did you have that culture of giving out flyers in your shop in New York?
Oh, yeah, well, that's one of the reasons why we opened the store to promote parties. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of big parties came out of that. I mean, when we talk about it, I only opened up the record store so we could have a place where people could come to learn about the parties or to get their flyers. And people were coming way far into Bensonhurst. This would be like if you were in London and you like opened a record store somewhere by Heathrow. If you lived in the neighborhood by Heathrow, you opened up a record store there. That'd be way off the beaten course of most people that live in London. Yet they'd all come there to get their flyers because that's where we were. So we were in Brooklyn and people would come and they get their flyers and their knowledge and their records. And yeah, we were just like definitely a major force in promoting this culture in the early 90s to Americans.
Yeah, when you mentioned San Francisco earlier, and I DJ'd in San Francisco about 3 years ago, and I walked into a record shop, which was very British centric.
Because they had a lot of British centric people there.
It had like all of the styles that we're talking about. And I got talking to the guy, and he'd been there since like 1991. And then I've got another friend in the UK, and in there's an event in Brighton called Tonka. In the early 90s, and some of the people who were involved with Tonka
started Tonka
moved to San Fran in like 1991.
Right.
And my friend here and the guy in the record shop, they knew each other.
Yeah.
But they hadn't connected for decades.
Yeah.
And then I walk in this record shop, get talking, and then all of a sudden all these pictures emerge from them in like 1991.
It was
under the bridge.
Right. Yeah, under the bridge.
Parties under the bridge.
Yeah, absolutely. Garth and Yano were UK guys that went early to San Francisco. They were the ones that started the scene in San Francisco. And then Hardkiss brothers, who were very close friends of mine, they were from Philly originally. They came to New York. They were getting they're getting the supply of whatever was supplied to take back to Philly. And then Scott Hardkiss asked me around after one of my raids, like early storm raids, we're thinking of moving to San Francisco and we might want to open a record store. And then I had my guys from the UK that was supplying, like there was a lot of money coming into whatever they were doing. We were going to open up a Sonic Groove Records in San Francisco in 1993. Had the space, it was ready to go, and then these guys that were involved got caught by like FBI. They were dipping Bibles in acid, and they were selling acid, and they were dipping the Bibles in acid and then making the perforated sheets. I know nothing about this. I'm not a drug dealer. I've never been a drug dealer, but the reason why we didn't have a record store in San Francisco is because these guys got
San Francisco is a wild place, though. When you think
all places, you're gonna dip Bibles full of LSD. That would be a place to do it. I never met these folks, but yeah, I mean, Scott Harkis and the Harkis family, God, rest in peace, Scott. He passed away about a decade ago. All these major influences in our lives. DJ Dan, I mean, it's just Dan was my close man. And it's going to happen a lot more now as we're getting older. I just want to say respect to all the soldiers we've lost over the years. There's so many, and it's just sad that, it's sad that I'm going to be 60 years old this year.
Yeah, do you know what? I find myself more and more every day as different music people talk to me.
Yeah.
It's like you pick up someone from a different genre or someone, and the conversation always gets down to we have to be more and more grateful each day.
Yeah,
we're here, and the fact that we are getting older and we lose more and more people, and we lose people who influenced the world with their music, influenced us as friends, and I think it's so essential to be grateful for our lives, and that we're still here and telling our story, but also remembering those who we have lost. That's why things like this are so important. And I saw the DJ Dan thing, because he was so influential.
Yeah, I mean, Dan and me were very close friends. I mean, I mean, more than people would ever know. I've spent time at his house, and just seeing the reaction, it's like there's only a few DJs from the 90s in America that are on that level. You got like Bad Boy Bill. I'm not going to mention everybody. I'm just saying, because I know like where Bad Boy Bill came from. He was from Chicago, and he was playing music that was straight up rave before Chicago even had a rave scene. It always fascinated me about him because he was into our music early on. Chicago didn't start getting raves because the house music thing was so big in Chicago. They wouldn't let rave come in. They wouldn't let it come in. And there's a few guys, like Donald Glaude's another West Coast that was one of Dan's partners. There's so many guys that mean so much to the building up of this culture. Like, I did a podcast with Dan like 5 years ago. It wasn't video, it was only audio. But Dan was telling me things about me that I didn't know. And a lot of big, points of him becoming the DJ he was, because he came to that Shrine Auditorium gig that I played in 1990. Stranger Than Fiction. I told him, it is really Stranger Than Fiction that you actually were at that event. And I somehow could have inspired you. He goes, Bones, come on, man. You inspired most of the West Coast from those shows. And I never really realized that I was the first guy to come there. And I don't you say like making your heart lighter every day, but people need to know the real history of this. And then there's so much of it, to just piece it to where it is. I mean, I hit a lot of people at an early point, and like made rave what it was in America, at least. So
yeah, you listen, like I opened this, there's not enough words as a fan of music to explain the influence that you've had over, Dan saying the West Coast.
Yeah.
I'm saying all of us in England, like literally every one of us who loves a breakbeat sped up to create that energetic vibe.
Yeah, to make it a dance to that people could dance to, and they did, and they love to dance to that stuff. And I just you mentioned Asin's another one. All those records that came out on a label like Asin, when Trip
Production House,
Production House. I mean, those early records were just incredible. Warriors Dance, Bang the Party. I mean, so many records that, you guys, Renegade Soundwave. I mean, man,
Yeah, I always credit like Renegade Soundwave. So your track that we spoke about earlier.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That is a sample record. That is groundbreaking. And then when it comes to the trajectory of drum and bass, along with yours, you have to take Renegade Soundwave, the Phantom, their crispness.
Yes.
They're creating the bass riff and the way their production is. And if you combine Renegade Soundwave, you without realizing it in '89, you're being shown the future of what will be become jungle drum and bass music.
The only other record that had that kind of impact was Meat Beat Manifesto, the Radio Babylon.
Absolutely.
So like when we talk about We Are IE, first of all, Lenny D. Ice. Let's just go with the name Lenny D. Ice, right? I came over, I'm doing Rage, Fabio and Groove made me a resident. I played every time I came here. I met a guy named Frankie Bones. The same night I met Lenny D. Ice. So we know We Are is one of the prototype records for drum and bass. I did a homage to him when he passed away. If you go on YouTube and look it up, I did a homage mix for him. Yeah. But I'm meeting Frankie Bones and Lenny D. Ice, and here comes Frankie Bones and Lenny D. What Frankie Bones told me was like, we never thought you were going to come over to Europe, so I just copped the name. And it's the same thing with Lenny D. Ice. He copped the name, you know? It's like, that's the impact we had coming in. No disrespect, shit happens. But like, Lenny D. Ice sampled the Meat Beat Manifesto, Radio Babylon. That's where that Breakbeat. And we had one in America that came before it, which is Shadows J. At this house. Yeah. That's where the We Are came from, because it's the same breakbeat, the same, whereas We Are is a little bit more hard and aggressive because the Shadows J used E2, E4 or Sueño Latino as the basis of the track, which was an ambient track. So you could throw a fierce beat behind it, but it's still going to be laid back.
Shadows J is a tune. But what's interesting is like, you mentioned Goldie earlier. So on my Eastman podcast, Eastman was the person who set up Cool FM, which was the radio station that like was the sound of jungle in London. When I spoke to Goldie last, both Eastman and Goldie are pivotal people in the next step on from like what you was doing in '89 or Renegade Soundwave or Meat Beat Manifesto, and both of them, both of their views on jungle is it's the vibe. It's not about ragga vocals. Right. It's not about, jungle is a vibe from the bass and the breaks and the roughness of the beats. And over the years, as time's gone on, and when I've done those videos where I talk about proto jungle, people go, "Oh, what proto jungle? Come on, mate!" But when you think of the vibe of rough breaks and the bass, and you can't call it jungle, but it's proto. Are you going to go breakbeat? Are you going to call it hardcore? You can't call it house. You can't call it freestyle. It's just this proto vibe.
Yeah, but like we had records like Security vibe.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
It now.
Security is a Florida record. Like Florida really had no business being involved in any of this. Yeah. Yet you have the Beat Club Security. That record is freestyle, but it's like freestyle that was made to come into this scene in Rave. And then other ones like the Canadian stuff, like I love Canadian, like Come Get My Lovin'. Sure. You know what I mean? And then even records like Debbie Malone, Rescue Me. It wasn't a drum and bass record, but it had the sub bass under it for the whole record. Those are what would be called prototypes, because the Reese bass. What's a Reese bass? Kevin Saunderson. Kevin Reese Saunderson. Out of a Detroit techno record, those subs all came known as the Reese bass, right? People call that sub bass the Reese bass. Who's Reese bass? Kevin Saunderson. Yeah. And, you got to give Kevin credit for that 1991 era where he was putting all the breakbeat records on KMS records. So you give Chicago a taste of it, because he was another one that pioneered it early on for us. Yeah. So
when do you think there was a change for you? Like, and you come out of the rave, because we all take rave with us. Yeah. But because of, when you've done something for so long, you're 38 plus years down the line of making music, you're pretty much 40 years down the longer of DJing. You're 45 years down the line of being creative from writing your tag, and you're a long way down the line.
So here's an example of this would be like when I told you I went to LA for the first time, June 1st, 1990. Now it's the Y2K, right? December 31st, 1999. Going on to January 1st, 2000, the Y2K. If I wasn't a big deal in Los Angeles from those 10 years, why would I be the guy at Together as One? This is Pasquale Rotella with another DJ that just passed away, DJ Reza. They teamed up to do this party called Together as One. On that party, I was the first DJ, and it was only one stage with one sound system. I played the very first record going into the Y2K. Now, if I wasn't a big deal during those 10 years, I wouldn't have been the guy to hold that slot the minute the millennium became the millennium. And I remember I counted it down. Like I was on the mic, 10, 9. Of all the parties that must have went on in the world on the Y2K, I was the first DJ to play the first piece of music during the Y2K. And I got that slot. So,
Yeah.
Because if you said who was the most exported DJ into Los Angeles during their rave scene, 1990 to 2000, I wouldn't be the first person mentioned. I definitely wouldn't. I don't know who would be, but it wouldn't be me. You know, people know I held the key there, but like sometimes I always come in where there's some guy that did something just a little bit more for that scene at that moment where my name don't get mentioned. Not that I need the credit for it, but I'm just saying as I'm writing all these stories, that would be a good point, those 10 years. And then after that, I kind of fell off on the West Coast. I don't know why, but you know, what did happen was 9/11. 9/11 changed everything. When, you know, being a DJ from New York City during 9/11 changed everything. Just, I didn't DJ for a while after that. It was just very traumatic time.
Right.
You know, watching those two buildings come down. It's like, I don't even want to get into details of that, but I think the DJ scene or the rave scene in America was in two parts. It was when it started to 9/11 and then 9/11 on. And then we had EDM and the scene even got bigger, but it was the EDM scene. It wasn't really a rave scene anymore. So,
Right.
changed a lot.
Interesting. But you've still, your legacy is incredible. So it's timeless. So even though like new eras and, you know,
Yeah.
going from rave to EDM,
Yeah.
like I remember when it was 8-10 years ago, and you come over for rain dance and
Yeah,
jazz
yeah. I
music.
mean, I
You're
definitely.
always, everyone from around the world always wants you because
I
you're
think
so timeless.
Yeah, they learned some of the stories. I mean, you see where Goldie is in his career, but Goldie was always out there. He's in movies. He's a big deal. You know, me, I'm kind of a little bit low key. I was never in like any Guy Ritchie movies, you know? In fact, the first time I actually met Goldie was probably in 2013. Pasquale did an EDC in New Jersey at MetLife Studio, and he wasn't even supposed to be there because they kicked him out of California, where he's had to start EDC in Vegas, because he got charged with all this stuff from doing events in California. And here comes Pasquale and Goldie, and they're walking along, and I'm in New Jersey, and I see them, and there's a bunch of people I know around. It was a pretty big rave, but nobody saw the part where Pasquale and Goldie walks up. Pasquale sees me, pulls Goldie up to me. He goes to Goldie, "You know who this is?" And it's just like the scene in the movie. He goes, "You know who I am?" Bricktop goes, "You know who I am?" And the two guys like, "No." And Goldie goes, "I know who you are." Well, Goldie looks at me and goes, "No, I don't know who you are." And then Pasquale goes, "That's Frankie Bones." And Goldie grabbed me in like a bear hug like this. And he goes, "Bones, Bones, Bones. There'd be no metalheads without Bones. I just want you to know." And he got all excited. And I was just like, blown away, because he looked me up and down, he didn't know words, but then the minute Pasquale said I was Bones, he was like, just grabbed me like it was great. I felt so great after that. It was one of my best moments ever.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Why do you think you've taken the vibe of rave with you forever?
I just think because it's I was always a DJ about the dance floor. You know, I make dances dance, and I have a lot of women friends over the years that were ravers. That even my logo, I started these mixtapes called Factory. They were my I had like 100 vibes and put them out over the years in the 90s, and it was a girl with a gun pointed down in her hand, and she had a halo on her head, and the girl represented a girl that just came to the party to dance. She doesn't want to get bothered by people trying to pick her up and take her home. She just wants to dance. And the gun's pointing down that if you break her dance while she's dancing, she's going to shoot you in the kneecaps. So, but girls have told me, like, they feel the energy of the music when I play, that it's made for the dancers on the dance floor. And I truly believe that. I always try to get the tracks that I think would cause the most mayhem on dance floors.
Yeah, love
And
that.
I hold that still to this day. I mean, you can listen to anything on my SoundCloud. Everything has relevance to it. It's just there's a lot of competition now. So a lot of people have different styles that they like and stuff. But I still think I hold it down as I always did. I don't even look at it like it's, you know, I come and I play and I do my thing and everybody's happy. I'm good.
I think your music still sounds incredibly authentic to you. Like when Pat gives me your stuff on his label. When I hear new stuff, it's always got that 88, 89 New York energy.
Yeah, I just put out on Bandcamp. I have a new Bones Breaks 2026. So when you listen to it, it has that, but it's up to date now. It's kind of like, whoa, you can feel it in between. So yeah, keep it going. To see what happens. I think each one of these type of podcasts is going to help educate, and maybe by the time, the time comes, I get the credit that I don't really want the credit. I just want people to know I did my thing. I'm happy. I'm good. I had a great life. There's nothing to look back on and be like, oh, his dad got murdered. I know my dad got murdered, but like it became a part of me, which made me go and do things in a way that maybe somebody else wouldn't have gone.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think you've inspired the world of music, full stop. Like anyone who's danced on a dance floor at a rave, anyone who's heard a breakbeat track sped up from the original break inside a rave, whether it was in whatever decade, 90s, 10s, now in the 20s.
Yeah, it's good. Maybe the world will figure it out now.
Yeah,
maybe we'll have a second reign or something.
Your influences in all of us, and I think, like you say, Goldie saying to you, there would be no me without what you done.
Yeah, this actually happened. I'm not making it up.
I can believe that he said it, because I'm sure that when I've tagged you on videos, he's commented underneath. When I've done videos about your influence, he has commented underneath, and I think he's right. He's right, and when I set about, before we started this interview, I said to you, I just want us to talk from feeling and vibe and emotion, and because that's what you are. Your feeling, your vibe, your emotion has influenced every one of us who plays a breakbeat, rave, techno, house, hardcore, jungle, drum and bass record, breaks, whatever you want to fucking call all these different genres. You had Bones Breaks in the early part of January 88, and that absolute breakbeat vibe, that no rules within the production is what,
and not knowing what rave was, and just coming into it. So it is kind of
is what we all become. And for me, I want to thank you for that.
Well, I want to thank you for having me. Billy, you and me gave me a book and I read it, and I'm just like, you're an amazing character, bro. You've done some things here. So
but
here's to continue the success, and we're gonna have to do a part 2 at some point. We'll have to do a part 2.
We have to, but I need to know 3 to 4 months in advance when you're over.
Okay.
So next time you're here, we can do lots of gigs together.
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah, we can.
Well, we're gonna work on that. This is all, like I said, after 8 years of seeing you, and then COVID happened, and I'm finally getting back into the UK realm. Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, because it's like, as long as I have 4 months in advance, knowing that you're here, then we've got our Rave Story event, which is built for you.
The next time we're looking to come back. We were looking to come back in October, around, so twice a year, be like now and then 6 months down the line. But yeah, I'm hoping that this is becomes a regular thing again.
And I think we should explore a book as well, to be fair with you.
Well, no, I've been working on mine.
Good.
I mean, afterwards it's just a lot to it, so we're getting it, a lot of stories, man. I want my book to have everything about my timeline from when I was born. So it'll get there.
Yeah.
I mean, we just told most of it right here, so exclusives.
Well, I'm so happy that you said, I've never told this story and I've never told that story. And
yeah, I mean, it's been a long ride, but I'm still here.
And magical. Frank, thank you so much, mate. And don't make it 8 years next time.
No. 8 years, it was... I had a breakup with a beautiful woman I was in love with, then COVID happened. That set me back 8 years, but I'm here still. So
Frank, love you.